like to welcome everybody to the December 6, 2017 regular board meeting of the McKinneyville Community Services District. We have a roll call, please.
Director Burke. Present. Director Corbett.
Present.
Director Couch.
Present.
Director Wheeler.
Present.
President Mayo.
Present.
How do you know we're all in sync on that?
Join me for the salute to the flag, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions to our agenda?
No, President Mayor, there are no additions to the agenda.
Entertain a motion.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Then a motion and a second. Would you give a roll call, please?
Director Burke. Aye. Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Couch.
Aye.
Director Wheeler.
Aye.
President Mayo.
Yes. We have no closed sessions tonight, and we have no public hearings tonight. This time, I'd open up the floor to public comment and written communication. Any person may address the board at this time upon any subject not identified on this agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the McKinneyville Community Services District. However, any matter that requires action will be referred to staff for a report of action at a subsequent committee or board meeting. As to matters on the agenda, an appropriate an opportunity will be given to address the board when the matter is considered. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and letters should be used for complex issues. If there's anyone that would care to address the board at this time, please step forward. And seeing none, I will close.
James, public comment?
Yes, sorry. I would like to take this time to introduce our new employee that we hired for Parks. That's Mike Buck to step on up. And I'm going to give you a little background. Mike, so this is Mike Buck. He is our chosen one for the operations parks maintenance side, the opening that we took forever to fill. I told him that I wouldn't make him speak at this, so unless you guys have questions when I'm done giving you his rundown, and it's quite interesting. Anyway, Mike's a new addition to the operations crew. He's originally from Reading, which is where he graduated from the CCC program. He worked with the CCC and National Park Service for several years, has worked in the logging and fence building, along with volunteering in the community. He enjoys spending time with his kids, riding dirt bikes and camping. Also, this is the interesting part, loves to sing to Britney Spears and knows the words to all her songs and plans to buy her Christmas album with his next paycheck.
All right, I've done it. I've done it again. Let's hear it.
Terrible.
Okay.
I didn't know where to start after that song.
No problem. We'll put you on
James will do a duet with
And you heard the guy that did the cover of that.
What's that?
You heard the guy that did the cover of that. That's so cool.
I hope this is appropriate.
No. And I can't. He's a kind of more of a folk song guy, and he did covers. I've done it again, and it is mind blowing.
Really?
Yeah, check it out.
Check it out.
So
Maybe
welcome. Next time you come, phone up on those words. So we might put you on the spot.
If you guys see him in the parks or one of our facilities, don't tackle him. He's one of us. So.
We're supposed to be talking about district business, not music. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
And look forward to getting better acquainted, and so you've come to a good spot.
You like my idea, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So with that, our public, and thank you for that. So let's move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial, to be acted upon by the board of directors at one time without discussion. If any board member, staff member, or interested person requests that an item be removed from the consent calendar, it shall be removed so that it may be acted upon separately. Any movement from that? Anybody from the public care to have an item removed?
Okay, I'll move the consent calendar, Chairman.
A second.
So can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Burke. Aye. Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Couch.
Aye.
Director Wheeler.
Aye.
President Mayo.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item E, continued in new business. E1, 2017 California Water Environmental Association CWEA Awards presentation. Attachment 1. CWEA Award nominating forms is on page 54 of your packet. And James Henry is going to present this item. If you would, please.
So each year, the California Water Environmental Association presents awards at their annual banquet. Nomination forms are submitted by agencies recognizing their staff or facility for the award. The committee then reviews the nominations and chooses a worthy recipient for each category. This year, the following members of our staff received awards, which was Chris Jones, Eric Jones, and Bill McBroom. Chris Jones was honored with the Collection System Person of the Year Award due to his hydro-cleaning and sewer lateral installation experience. Eric Jones was honored with the Pre-Treatment Person of the Year Award due to his hard work with creating and implementing the pre-treatment program, along with building good relationships with the business. And Bill McBroom received a special award. I'm going to call these guys up and I'll read their nomination forms really quick. It won't take long, and then we can represent them their awards. Eric was nominated as Pre-Treatment of the Person of the Year. Eric's been working hard on creating and implementing a pre-treatment program with businesses, the business community of McKinleyville. This has required him to start a working relationship with the business in town and fall under the EPA regulations as he developed industrial discharge permits for each business that discharges in our collection system. He performs annual testing and inspections of the business to ensure they are in compliance with the industrial discharge permit. Chris Jones was the only person who was nominated for this award. And really nobody was, we just put his name in. He's been a leader at the MCSD in the collection system maintenance and repair. He's quick to teach those around him everything that he knows. His method of training works well with new employees, if he doesn't hurt them. He has an understanding of collection system that allows him an insight that works well for troubleshooting and repairs. He's confident and skilled in running all necessary equipment and used to repair and maintain the system. He's an asset to the MCSD. Bill McBroom every year gets the Electrician Person of the Year award, and this year he did not get it. Nobody's been able to really beat him out, and our walls in the office are covered with those plaques. And we're really getting sick of looking at him, to be honest, and he gloats around about it, even though I've taught him everything he knows.
Maybe that's, we can wall off one wall at the kiosk.
Yeah.
And that could be the memorial kiosk.
So this year we did something different. So Bill's been, and I reported this a few times, but Bill has been doing a wonderful, amazing job at training now. So we moved him into the training side since he's so well at his job. We open classes through SEWA twice a year, and they're each 2-day classes, and they're held here at the activity center, or Azalea Hall. And he trains people on setting up panels, troubleshooting, setting up switches, and I'll let him tell you a bit more about it when I bring him up here. But so instead of giving him a plaque that he's got 100 of, SEWA wanted to recognize him this year with the recognition of continuously providing exceptional high-level training for workers in the industry. So he got this plaque this year for being that guy and not having another plaque that he already had. I think he's upset for not getting the other plaque, to be honest with you. I put myself in for that one and I didn't get it. So, but anyway, I want to bring the three guys up here for you. Bill can tell you a little bit about the class that he teaches here. He does the pumps, motors, and electrical.
Yep. Come on up, guys. Come on up and yammer in the mic so that we can get it on tape.
Yeah, it's just an electrical class. It's not going to make them electricians, but it's going to teach them how and what they're looking at when they open the panel. So hopefully when they call somebody, they can say, oh, the control transformer smoke, instead of just saying, ah.
And so the one thing about his class, one of his most positive teaching elements in his class is, for some reason last year he asked me for a picture of my hand, and so now he brings that up on a slideshow. If you stick your hand in where it doesn't belong, you'll look like this guy. And so then they just, so it's positive, and I get it, but so it works.
And he uses your face for what? For which
This will cause
for which example?
Apparently you didn't have the training, right?
I had to teach him somehow, like, don't do this.
So I just want to say, Bill, that I come by and see how full the classes are, and different people that I bump into that have taken it that just, are just really thankful for your for your teaching. Easy for me to say, and they really appreciate it, and they feel like it really went well. So thank you very much.
I built 7 panels that we used to train with. Usually 3 people per panel works out pretty well. So the class of 21. We've just recently upgraded the treatment plant, so now I've got some more parts and pieces available to build more panels. Maybe increase the size of the class. I was also approached by San Francisco when we go down there and teach a class down there.
Super.
So Bill, I don't want to put you on the spot, but so since you started teaching this class, how many guys do you think from the area
I had a couple of guys repeat, but
It's up from out of the area too.
Yeah.
they've been up as far as like Marysville.
And you can only teach so many in a class, so you can only teach up to 22,
21 right now.
21, and they fill up, and we raise the prices.
And they're not repeating because they're slow learners like James and I.
Right, because they still not
But 2-day classes, we kind of go at the rate that they can do, and then how far we get.
And so
The complications, we get some pretty complicated panels.
So there's approximately 21 people per class, and you've taught the class going on
Twice a year for
3 years now, been 6 times.
longer than that, hasn't it?
I think 3. When we first started, we had 3 panels. So
we had 3.
3, then we made 5, made 7, and so it's like I said, it sells out, and we raised the prices. We doubled the prices, and it's still sold out. So it's a great money making procedure too.
And nobody actually gets electrocuted, do they?
No, we tried to break her a couple times, but nobody died.
So we have a few more questions and comments from the board.
Well, thank you for teaching the class. It's the first I've heard of it, and I wonder if we offer any other classes of the sort of a technical training like that.
Capital and Water Environment is all about the technical training for the local wastewater professionals, and that's a lot of what they do. And there are other classes that they go through their
Our section,
our section is North Coast section up here, and they're the training guy programs.
The chair of the programs.
There's chair, and they put together other trainings with other people, chlorine, safety, that kind of stuff. This is just one of many.
Yeah, so we'll hold 6 trainings a year. So it goes from confined space to chlorine safety.
Tomorrow's class is SEWA.
Tomorrow's not SEWA. It's not. Oh yes, tomorrow's is SEWA. It's going to be somebody else on SEWA. So tomorrow's chlorine transit.
Say that over again a little louder so that everybody can hear what's happening tomorrow.
Tomorrow, our staff is attending a chlorine training.
Thank you.
And that is through SEWA. It wasn't going to be at first, and then SEWA stepped in on that.
There you go.
And that's California Water
Environment Association.
So that's a class offered through us, or through SIWA, and we.
Yeah, so not only are we members, but are members of SIWA, but we're also, two of us, me and Mike, are board members on it. So I was the president of it this year, and I just went into past president as of 2 weeks ago. So, and we just get together, there's 5 of us on the board, we get together and set up trainings and conferences, and we just did our annual banquet last month, and so yeah, it's fun. I mean, we could use more help, but it's fun, and we get trainings out there, and people benefit from it, because in this area it's hard to get training and get your continuing education credits that you need for your certification. So we're either traveling to Sacramento and staying in a room, you know, on the travel expense, and to get training, or we try to host as many here as we can, you know, on safety, and try to get people their water and wastewater hours to keep their certification. So.
And it really helps to network with the local people around here too.
Yeah.
So I get calls all the time from Blue Lake and other places to help troubleshoot stuff over the phone.
One of the things that I always see in these kind of things is we continually are working on emergency preparedness and readiness, and that training and cross-polling. We don't know what will happen when we have a disaster, and so you may be out of the area. We may need somebody to step in. We need them to do that, and vice versa. You may be going to some farmed out to go help somebody in a critical situation. So that's really a great, another great aspect of the training. You want to have the other?
I'm just going to say I've had coworkers who've gone, and what an excellent class they all say that is. So
I get some feedback. We have a little sheet.
Someday I get to come, but it's like all my employees say, well,
and we get good feedback. We do get a lot of, Eureka, Arcata, Humboldt Bay, right now, Crescent City. Humboldt Bay they have 2 board members, and we have 2, and then we've got an engineer we've grabbed a couple engineers recently on there. So it's kind of been up and then kind of went down, like it was going to disappear, and we built it back up, and it's doing fine. Yeah.
So
if you guys don't know, there's a North Coast section of the California Water Environment System. So that's what we're talking about. I just want to commend the district on letting everybody participate, because there was a while in Arcata where they said, your time's too valuable, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I really
our guys really don't have a choice.
Yeah. Well, members. Okay.
So I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to have a word.
Chris, you want to speak in the room?
You don't have to, but we certainly appreciate your award and your
So
service.
Chris was recognized due to Chris is in the sewer side and the collection system side. Chris is that go-to. He's the guy going on hydro cleaning. If there's we need to put in install sewer service, he's the backhoe operator. Chris goes in many different directions. Manhole repairs, inspections, installations. Like Chris is all over the place in the hydro cleaning. So he's pretty much, he's under Eric, but he's Eric, one of Eric's go-to guys also, like I need this done, and first wouldn't go anywhere. So he was very deserving of the award. Even though he was the only one, really, but he was well deserving. But we still love him. Yeah. And Eric Jones that pre-treatment program is a handful, and to keep on track with everybody and build a relationship that he has with everybody and all these businesses, and be able to walk in with, not all of them have open arms, but most of them do. Some of them close the door on him, but look at it.
Well, look this way.
But I think there's a lot of, what people don't see is the headaches behind that, and getting everybody to get their permits, renewed every year, and get their testing done, and on the other side of this is the grease trap inspection, and getting the grease traps pumped, and they're supposed to be pumped, and like there's a lot behind that people don't see, and so Eric's very, very, very deserving of this award, and he also was the only one who was nominated.
Nobody else wants to do that.
But so these guys are all very deserving of the award. I'm not surprised on either one of them getting anything. To be honest, McKinleyville could swipe quite a few awards if we didn't look greedy at these things. there's a collection system in the year that I know that we could, we've got in the past, like, there's a lot of awards that McKinley can get. Try not to give them all to one person, because people hate you, but, and they don't invite you back.
Well, I know that people in the community may not be completely aware of it, but everybody that works in the industry and all of us on the board know how hard you guys work. We appreciate it, and there's a level of expertise that you just can't jump in there and do it. You have to really. It's an art form, actually. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, I would like to take an opportunity to thank the three guys for doing what they do for the district, and also just sort of individually Bill's expertise with his electrical prowess, also his ability to be able to troubleshoot and fix stuff with paper clips and epoxy and stuff that saves the district innumerable amounts of money, and of course Chris. It goes without saying that Chris stepped up reluctantly to become our equipment operator. I don't think that Chris really was like volunteering for the job, but he's taken the job, and he does a great job with it, and he has the knowledge of our system and the collection system and things like that. And when it's raining out, we have gully washers. I can guarantee you, Chris is one of those guys that's out there looking at manholes, looking for people that are dumping on us, because there's the expense for us to have to treat stormwater as opposed to wastewater is very important, and we take that very serious. And then Eric, thank you very much. We came up with the sewer use order. We updated our sewer use ordinance a few years ago, and came up with a pre-treatment program, and promptly I became general manager, and that got dumped in Eric's lap, and he's done an awesome job with the pre-treatment program, and very vigilant on the grease traps, and making sure that the grease isn't going down the drain, that it's being trapped very much. These three gentlemen right here are probably three of the most best people in the area, most knowledgeable people when it comes to water and sewer stuff, and it's a tribute to McKinleyville Community Services District that they choose to work for McKinleyville Community Services District. So I want to thank the three of you very much.
Yeah. It's the only time we allow the three of them in the same room together.
Unless there's an emergency.
Really,
no, we're outside.
If you take Chris out of the equation, everything's fine. It's just
You guys, come on over here. We'd like to.
Bill doesn't need to be in the front row.
I've been in the front row since I've been
You look too much at it.
Nice to pick it up. So we have the chords.
God, it looks like it's scrimmage. We got some bigger upside down.
Maybe squeeze in a little bit.
No?
Really? One without.
Yeah, but you gotta have one with, so you can.
Oh, there's a couple. Okay.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, that was nice. It was nice to have honorarium.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that class that Bill teaches. A huge number of people have attended that class in the area.
I stop in, I don't know, 5 or 6 times anyway, and man, they're into it.
Yeah.
They really are into it. So. All right, E2, consider approval of phase 1 of the mainline replacement and rehabilitation master plan, detachment 1, 2, 3, and 4, starting at page 58 and going going to page 288. And the general manager will give us a report on this.
Thank you. Let's see, phase one of the master plan has been prepared to provide framework for the planning, funding, and implementing replacement, rehabilitation, and upgrades to the district's water and sewer main lines. The master plan effort includes an analysis of all pipes, manholes, blow-offs, assemblies, valves, air releases, and pressure-reducing valves. These reports will serve as the first of 2 or potentially 3 phases of the master plan effort. The final master plan will serve as a final planning and budgeting outline to ensure that district is able to continue their high level of service to the community well into the future. The original water distribution system was constructed in 1973, and the original sewer system was started construction in 1976. As the system continues to age, replacement or rehabilitation of existing infrastructure will be necessary to maintain an effective, functional system. Staff recommends that the board participate in the presentation of the Phase 1 water and sewer mainline replacement and rehabilitation master plans document, discuss report findings, take public comment, and approve the water and sanitary sewer mainline replacement and rehabilitation master plan phase 1 report. At this point in time, I'd like to invite Pat from GHD, Pat Kaspar from GHD up, and he will participate, or he will present to you the phase 1 water and sewer report. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I'm actually going to get to Jeff McGarvey on the phone.
Hopefully still awake. He's in Florida.
Just cocktail time in Florida.
Hello, you have reached Legal Services of Northern California.
I obviously
Office hours.
did not dial the right number.
Sorry. Could have been bad.
Be careful dialing those familiar numbers.
I'm actually dial 9. Talk.
Hello, you have reached Legal
Hey, Jeff. For some reason, when I'm dialing you on the main phone, it goes to Legal Services of California. But I think I'm just going to put speaker on and be on my cell phone. Hopefully that'll work. Okay.
So go ahead and let's hear if we can hear you.
I can hear you folks fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And so obviously you can hear us, but I'll repeat questions if any questions come up. So, as Greg said, my name is Pat Kaspar from GHD. I'm a senior engineer on this project. With me, I have Nate Stevens. He's the guy who actually did a lot of the work, but I'll be doing most of the talking. And Jeff is with Wildan Financial Services. Wildan did your last couple rate studies, and they also did the financial review of this project.
And Jeff's worked on other projects for McKinneyville Community Services District also as directly for McKinneyville.
Right. So I'm going to try to move through this as quick as I can, but feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. I'm going to start with a general overview of the master planning effort and then get into each of the systems, the water distribution system and the sewer collection system. We'll talk about the financial analysis and then run through the conclusions and recommendations. So Greg did a good job already of summarizing this. We're looking at both the separate systems, the water distribution system and the sewer collection system separately, two separate master planning efforts. But they're both 40 plus years old. Water system went in 73, like Greg said. Sewer system was 76. They've been well maintained by the district. They're in really good shape. But if you look for a book value of how long AC pipe will last, it would say 50 years. So you're coming on the life expectancy of both the systems, the water and the sewer collection system. So now is the time to start planning for their replacement. And that is the intent of this master planning effort, is to lay out a roadmap for the district of figuring out what system how you want to replace, how much you replace per year, and figuring out how to pay for it. Yes?
Tell us what AC is, Ben?
Sure. So AC is asbestos concrete pipe or asbestos cement pipe. And as we look at the maps too, you'll see a lot of both your sewer and your water distribution are AC pipe. That was all the original piping that was put in. Like Greg mentioned as well, we broke this into 3 separate phases. We're finishing phase 1, which is the main overview of the system. John, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm going back to the 40 years. Is it 40 years from now, or is it 40 years from when they're installed, 1973?
Yeah, so
and
they're
76.
Yeah, so they are 40 years old. They went in.
So they need, theoretically, without going into whether they last beyond the manufacturer's warranty of 40 years, they theoretically are coming up very quick for replacement.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
I can guarantee.
So we're deep in the saddle on that first part.
Right.
Okay.
I can guarantee you some of that pipe, and I'll talk about it too, some of that pipe is failing now. Some of that pipe will go 100 years, easily. So 50 years, just kind of like I said, book value. If you ask somebody, the manufacturer, how long is this pipe going to last? Over 50 years, and we're coming up on that 50 years now. Okay, so this first phase 1 effort really is a high-level effort.
And I'm talking just one other thing that makes this very clear. Even though the manufacturer's warranty is for 40 years, you think 50 years is a better lifetime estimate?
Yeah, so we don't have a manufacturer's warranty in hand, per se. But if you ask them, they'll say 50 years. So we're at 40 years now. We've got 10 years before we can start to expect failures. Okay. Phase 1, very high level. Looking at all the previous studies that I've done, talking to the district staff, Greg, James, operations staff, about where they've been having problems. And then we put together cost estimates of replacing the entire systems. And then ran that by Willdan to have them do a financial analysis of looking at, okay, how much, if we want to replace the entire system, how much would that impact our rates? Phase 2 then is going to look at more detailed analysis of replacing certain components. I can guarantee you that we're not going to go in and replace the entire system. We are going to focus our efforts on, and phase 2 is going to be more focused look at, okay, how much can we really replace per year, and when do we want to start doing that? And then phase 3 is, as I'm going through this presentation too, there are certain sections of the system that we really don't understand what condition they're in, and they are critical components of the system, so we want to do some specific looking at specific pipes. For instance, your main line from Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, which runs off from their treatment system at Fort Blex, runs under 299, under the Mad River, up North Bank Road to the Raven Pump Station. We have no idea what condition that pipe is in, and it might go another 50 years, it might be ready to fail tomorrow. So phase 3 is going to be focused on looking at specific components of the system.
So until phase 3, how much on the ground assessment is done on the system?
Not very much. We've done a little bit, mainly looking at the middle crossing, which we'll talk about later, in the sewer system. But it really has been going back and at all the previous studies that have been done. and summarizing all that stuff. And we haven't really done much of that in phase 1. Phase 2 will probably start to actually go out and look at, alignments and how to replace sections of pipe. But phase 3 really is the dig up the pipe or run a ball down the pipe to see the condition. Okay, phase 1, again, just an overview of existing water and sewer systems, summarize the previous studies where we looked at the short-term replacement or upgrade requirements in the next plus or minus 5 to 10 years. Like I said, we developed entire system replacement costs and then fed those into a financial analysis to figure out what the rates would be to try to replace the entire system, either in a 50, 75, or 100-year time frame. And I'm going to pause there and say we're going to be talking about rates in this presentation. In no means are we recommending these rates or anything like that. This is just for a high level, okay, how much would it cost if we did want to replace the entire system?
The cost estimate for replacing is like $142 million for each system. Does that come from the engineering studies, or does that come from Willdan's financial analysis?
That comes from engineering studies. So we went through and figured out what diameter and length of all the pipes and figured out how much it would take to replace it, and then fed back to Willdan. And Willdan used those numbers then to come up with the rates.
So there are tables. It's kind of like doing new construction. I can tell you how big the house is going to be, and there's programs that tell me how many 2x4s I need, and how many tube guys. You use the same sort of stuff in what you do?
Yep, yeah, we did that. We looked at how much is on the road, so how much would we have to repay versus stuff that's across country where we wouldn't have to repay. Yeah, so that's how we developed it.
And in doing that, did you consider each system separately for costs, or did you consider if you do the road, you might do those systems?
We considered each system separately.
Okay.
And one last.
Sure.
Would you characterize that total amount for each system as sort of a maximum amount or a ballpark? So
it's a pretty conservative, definitely, I would say not even pretty conservative, it's definitely conservative. So it's maximum amount. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the water system.
Can I ask one question? Those are in today's dollars, correct?
Correct. Those are in today's dollars, right? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I have a question, Colleen. What on our balance sheet is the total amount of money we've spent on putting in the existing system pipes? Do you know?
The book value, that would be the book value of pipes in the ground. That's in the fixed asset schedule. So yes, it is included in the total. I can break that down or sort it out, but it's literally listed in the fixed asset schedule.
But it's
not even monthly. It's compressed in monthly treasury.
Send an email. I wanted to know because it strikes me we're having construction costs 1,000% higher than when we put them in. I don't know. I'm trying to.
Yeah, those are depreciated.
Yeah.
Well, and also they're not fully depreciated yet, and we're still actually paying. We're still paying the original funding on both systems.
Until when?
The sewer system, 3 more years, and the water system till 23, I think.
And so hopefully we would be able to pay those before we have to replace them.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully. Well, otherwise you got to double.
They're talking about, your timeline. I'm pretty sure we have some time to pay off the current system before we start that.
And then I have a question to the consultant. And again, I'm going to want either an answer from staff tonight or that they want more time to consider it. But if the pipe filling lasts 50 years, why don't you amortize over 50 years? Or otherwise, aren't you really falling further in debt?
Yeah, yes. So the short answer to that is yes, but it comes down to how much will the ratepayers.
Well, no, I understand the dilemma, but wouldn't want to be misleading that if we pick 75 years, we're in fact in not operating on a balanced budget, and we're leaving a debt for that future time period.
So can I take this one?
Yeah.
So one of the things that that's unique about this type of infrastructure is that it will warn you before it goes bad. So you'll start to get leaks. And a very common to this industry is that when a piece of section of pipe gets a leak, you go and you fix that leak.
Right.
Then you get another leak and you go and you fix that leak, and then you get another leak and you go and fix that leak, and then at some point you say that section needs to be replaced because we're out there fixing leaks all the time.
Right.
And that's more of that's the old school way that pipe was determined whether or not it had met its useful life. So I think right now we're not experiencing any sort of leaks that we're finding they're all because of physical things, or because somebody broke the pipe by some action, or a root broke the pipe, or things like that. So I think that those are all good things to keep in mind. That I think that we'll have warnings for a lot of it. Sometimes sewer pipes are a lot different though. We could wake up tomorrow and we could have the top of a sewer pipe collapse from
right.
gas.
Well, I'm just trying to get the total scope of dollars and the dollars.
Right. So
amortized life and to something that's livable or ratepaper.
So I think that stating that the lifespan of the pipe is 40 years. But that it might last 50 years. There's a potential that the majority of the pipe in the system will last 100 years. It is not uncommon for AC pipe to last 100 years.
Will we have a better grasp on estimating that after the completion of phase 3, where we're actually inspecting the pipes?
Yes.
And when they leak, usually they don't catastrophically leak, they leak small.
Yes.
And I realize this is almost Ouija board stuff, but
yes.
What's the length of time before they sprout a small one usually till you got to replace it? Is it 5 years?
That's kind of outside my.
Yeah, and that's anybody's guess.
Okay, well I realize it's Ouija board, but someone has experience with this.
Yeah, I would expect that a section of pipe that was all installed at the same time will have many reoccurring leaks before it's determined that the whole piece of pipe either needs to be lined or pulled out of the ground and replaced.
Well, doesn't that have a lot to do with things like geological activity, traffic, extra traffic, that kind of stuff? Some of them could last 100 years without any problem.
The soil condition, the chemistry in the soil is a significant contributor to what's going on the outside of the pipe, which then affects how long the pipe is going to last.
And is the longevity of I would say cast iron would probably be the least longevity, but I don't know. The asbestos cement versus the polyvinyl chloride is.
So actually, cast iron, if you have it actually really goes back to soil conditions. If you have good soil conditions for cast iron, that stuff will last almost forever.
Almost forever. And so this may not be a concern at all, but it jumps out at me. The asbestos cement pipe. Is that something that we are needing for new understanding reasons to get rid of that sooner than some of the others, or not?
No, because that in itself will create another issue. Is if we don't leave that pipe in the ground, which I would highly recommend that we do everything in our power to leave that pipe where it's at, whether we burst and put another pipe inside of it or whether we line it, because if we bring that pipe out of the ground, that opens up a whole other consideration because of the hazardous waste aspect.
And then I realize we are where we are, but what's our level of technology of soils mapping? And if it's not very good when we go in, will we start to map these so we have a better soils picture for, I guess, 200 years from now, the next report, a little while ahead.
That's something that we're looking at.
Yeah, so that'll be part of phase 3. I think as we start looking at this stuff and seeing what.
Oh, so you will actually take a look at the underlying soils and both using that for predicting failure and predicting a longer life.
Yeah.
So that, and don't want to get too off track on that, but I, especially in this whole process, appreciate the partnership that we developed with HSU students and the capstone, what they're part of it. And when it comes to evaluating the soils, I think that would be another place for us that we could come up with another really good partnership that makes sense, and it's something that would be a benefit to the students. And I just want, I don't know whether you thought about that or not, but I have been thinking about that while I was studying this.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll send the students out there with the shovels.
Wait a minute, can you repeat that again? I want to make sure everybody heard that.
Great idea.
I'd like to have polyvinyl chloride pipe. Is that how you say it?
George, a little louder, please.
Is there a lifespan on that?
Yeah, typically they'll tell you 50 years as well for PVC. But PVC, a lot of this pipe, PVC has only been barely around for 50 years, so it's kind of right at that, and there's not a lot of data of how long it will last. So that's kind of unknown as well.
What I've seen, it has the rubber O-rings in it. Is that better in an earthquake?
It tends to flex better than the AC pipe, yes, in an earthquake.
All right. And on the iron pipe, I've seen it where the iron's gone.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just a channel through the dirt with some rust stains where the pipe used to be.
Yep.
And it's still working until you dig it up, and then you go, where's the pipe? So, and I think I read in the report there's no cathode or electrical type. We're not putting any juice down these pipes or anything.
No, you don't have very much ductile iron pipe, which is what you want to protect with a cathodic protection. But what you do have is not protected with cathodic protection. That's correct. If you have good soil condition, it doesn't need to be.
And correct, but our cement, asbestos cement pipe, is it big enough to line? Is it actually diameter enough that we can actually, line it if necessary?
In certain sections of the system, yes, absolutely. We'll talk about Central Avenue. Central Avenue is AC pipe. And
right.
It's already corroding away. And, it's a valve spigot as well, like you were talking about. And the pipe that goes inside the valve, this is where your seal is, and it's corroded this pipe back to that seal.
Really?
And if it corrodes it much further, then it starts to separate, and you can't line that stuff. Right. Lining it doesn't provide any structural support. It just protects the inner stuff.
So just the opposite issue is our need to increase the size of our lines going under the freeway.
Yeah.
And if I'm correct, they're asbestos cement lines.
Those I think are actually ductile iron lines.
Are they? So, and when we look at the map,
the pipe inside the casing.
The maps are a bit confusing to me. It looks like there are 3 lines crossing under the freeway on one map, and it looks like there's only 2 on another map. So I'm a little confused.
Well, there's 3.
One's water and one's sewer, isn't it?
Yeah, one's water and sewer.
Oh, okay, never mind.
There's 3 sewer lines that cross.
Yeah, but there are 3 sewer lines. Okay, and those are the ones that I'm most concerned about on upside.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right with those. Lining those would do no good at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we need to upsize it.
Okay, all right, and that's going to be in the figures, whether we decide to do it or not. We'll have that in our figures.
Yeah. Yep. And those are some of the things we have to do more immediately. Okay.
And I don't know whether this is appropriate, because maybe we should let you get your presentation, or do you want questions at this point?
I'll take any questions you have.
Well, I have one with the exception of interest earnings, which first of all is a huge section if you've got $100 million. The earnings actually could amount to something. We're projected using annual escalation factors. What was that?
Jeff, you still there?
I'm here.
Annual 100 years, that you could make or break the project with those estimates. So they obviously need a lot of care.
I think he used, so he's asking what you used for your annual escalation. I think he used 3%?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. We addressed each line item of your budget individually. So there are multiple escalation factors that were used and applied to each line item of your budget. For the CIP itself, for escalating today's dollars into future dollars for capital costs, I think we did use 3%. I did want to make a point too, real quick on your conversation you just had started with the question about this 50 years, if it only lasts 50 years, does it make sense to amortize over 100 years? For purposes of the financial analysis and the cash flow analysis we did not assume that you did $142 million of improvements in year one. They were phased out over a 40-year period. So you're doing $4 or $5 million a year of improvements each year. We did not assume that you're going to borrow $142 million for each system because you can't practically do $142 million of the projects in 1 year. They will be phased out according to criticality and direction from your engineers there. And so we just, for purposes of this cash flow analysis, assumed a 40-year estimated useful life and spread out those projects over a 40-year period.
But you took the 100-year running average for inflation at 3% a year?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just one other question because I don't get a chance to see the numbers flow. But we're running a little less inflation than that. And over 100 years, that's actually pretty big money. If we were to run below 3% for, let's say, the next 5 years, that could help us quite a bit, right, by the time you get out to 100 years?
Jeff?
Yeah, we could, in fact, the model set up to run scenarios such as that. We could assume 3% probably is on the high side, the conservative side, which is what we want to be. 2% is probably more in line with what the what's the publication I'm trying to think of? Engineers in the room there, Pat. We use an ENR. We use an ENR cost escalation factor. Looking back at historical stuff, it's probably been closer to 2% than 3%. But we can run whatever scenarios you folks direct us to.
And then I want to ask one other question, where there's a little safety built to this. On the interest earnings of only 0.25%, and clearly we've gone through an era right now of exceptionally low returns. That seemed very unlikely to extend a long period of time. That's a little bit of a safety margin. Would you guys say that?
It is, and keep in mind too that the interest earnings that we use do not apply to bond proceeds. That is simply cash in the bank. We do not try to say because we don't create it because we don't know how you're going to borrow yet. We don't create you had a borrowing and you're going to draw down on this kind of a schedule, meaning you'll have excess cash. We don't try to get into estimating a drawdown or an arbitrage situation for interest earned on bond proceeds. So what the interest earnings used, the 0.25%, is simply applied to excess cash generated from year-to-year operations in your system.
We could probably adjust for those right at the end of each 20-year payment period when we look at our further projections, right?
Well, let's keep in mind that the 218 process only lasts for 5 years, so I would expect that we would reanalyze this every 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Because our rate cycle is only 5-year period. So.
And then I wanted to know. It was mentioned that our adjusted growth is 1%, and my understanding is staff was consulted coming up with that figure. What have we been running on building permits? And I realize this is all tied up in the county and they still don't have the statistics to us, but.
There was around 110, didn't you say, this year?
No, I would
not for us, but I mean in the county.
In the county itself, I would say our average is somewhere in the 30 ballpark, 30 per year of new connections.
And that's coming out to about 1% increase.
No, that's less than that. It's like 0.4%.
So we're assuming a little bit more growth over.
Our up until the bubble burst, we were averaging over a 20-year average of about 0.8. We used 0.8 for all of our planning, and so I would expect that we probably won't see that type of growth again here in McKinleyville. So I would say that anything between 1 and 0.5 is probably fairly.
Well, that's good to assume, but I think we also should keep in mind and go back and figure out when we had our most significant growth over the period, what that was, and we need to keep that in the back of our mind because it could happen.
We were at 1.4% for several years, so.
Okay, so if we need to kind of keep that in our mind, not necessarily that's what everything's going to fall out at, but we've upgraded our sewer plant. As this comes along, we're going to, look more attractive. We do have X amount of available lots, and now we have more ability to take. We may look a little more attractive, again. So I think what you're saying makes perfect sense. It's very reasonable, but I just kind of like us to also maybe subliminally, if nothing else, calculate for that eventuality as well.
And I think, at the risk of an extremely gross oversimplification, if we can find out the growth rate of like Arcata and Fortuna, and the county and our growth rate, we can have our first glimpse of what are the effects of the general plan, because you had the 2007, everybody went down. We've since substituted in the general plan. There's a lot of controversy, even though the goal was to get rapid growth, whether in fact it's a result of less growth, and we're going to need that. All these things tie together really tight, and I'd like to at least take a look at those numbers.
I think those things are important to look at. I agree with Director Ford when he was here, though, that overall the growth rate's not going to be significant. I just think that in that low growth rate for the entire county, we may actually get a little more of that percentage because of what a good facility we have, what a good place we have, like that. That's all.
We have flat ground. It's easy to build with. If you're going to build in Humboldt County, Kellenville's the easiest place to build. So I would assume we would be the leader of the pack for growth.
But that's an open question these days, and the issue is, we need to probably take 1%, that's for now, but I do want us to take a picture. What were the effects of those general plan amendments on our growth rate?
Right.
Because I'm not sure it's as projected, and if you talk to the supervisors, their thing is, well, we just put it down to satisfy Brina, what's your problem? And our problem is they changed the balance.
Could we redirect back to
that's what I was just getting ready to do, and I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I appreciate the conversation, and we can have that at some other time amongst us, and I apologize. These things are very concerning to us, but if you would go ahead with your presentation, and I'd
be happy.
Thank you.
And I'm going to jump through this slide and kind of look at where we came out. Really, pipe size up for the water system, even with these growth rates, I think you guys are fine. I think you don't have a capacity issue at all on your water system. there is the tank, and that's outside this planning, that's already going down another planning path, and that's being budgeted for. But other than that, there's really, capacity is not an issue. And as well as there have not been, Greg was talking about those areas that, you have one leak, you go back, fix that leak, and fix another leak a couple months later. That has not been an issue at all either with the water system. There are a few minor low, high pressure areas, but the district is working on those as well. So there really any near-term, short-term projects didn't fall out of this exercise. So there's nothing on the water system that you guys really need to get done here in the next 5-10 years. Long-term, though, it goes back to what we've already talked about. It's asbestos cement pipe that we need to start planning on a replacement of that. However, there are the crossings too. So we talked about the 3 sewer crossings. There's actually 5 Highway 101 crossings for the water system. 3 of them are on bridges, run through bridges. 2 of them are under the highway. And then there's the Humboldt Bay pipeline as well. We'll actually jump back to the map. You guys probably already know all this, but the Humboldt Bay comes from I guess I should turn it on. No, still doesn't reach. Does this one reach? And like I said, you guys probably already know this story. But so your pipe comes off of the Court Wax from Humboldt Bay, runs down that hill under 299, under the Mad River, runs up to North Bank Road, and then out to the Grande Ring pump station. The district had the foresight when they're putting in the new Highway 101 bridge to put a pipe in that bridge. Then we went back and with Humboldt Bay and Arcata and the district got grant funds to connect to Arcata's system and run it through that pipe to Ring 2. So if this crossing goes out, you do have an emergency connection, but that is an emergency connection. That isn't supposed to be something that you're going to use long term. So we really need to understand what that pipe under the river looks like. Because if that goes up, well, you guys all know, it's going to be very expensive and very hard to permit putting in a new crossing there. So that's one of the things we need to look at. And we need to understand how those the pipes through the bridges and the pipes under 101 also look like. One of the other areas is Central Avenue too. It's going to be really expensive to replace the main along Central Avenue. That's kind of the backbone of the system, and you guys know that the traffic it's going to be a pain to do that. So, bottom line, we put together costs for replacing the entire system, came up with $142 million. Going to jump into the sewer system and run through this really quick.
I was just going to ask if we could turn the heat up just a notch. Sorry.
I can take my coat off on my desk. Already too hot.
Tell the sheriff better turn that fan on.
Turn it down. Yeah, let's get ready to take it off. Take it off.
So with the sewer system, though, capacity is an issue. There are the 3 crossings of the sewer system, and for those ones as well. So there's the northern crossing, there's the middle crossing, and then there's the southern crossing of where it crosses 101. The middle crossing has already, when you guys have big stormwater flows, that's already doesn't have enough capacity, it's backing stuff up. The southern crossing too is shortly behind that as far as capacity issues. So those are our 2 main areas we really do in the short term need to look at fixing. As part of this, We came up with a couple of options and costs for the middle crossing. And that does need to get budgeted for and need to move down soon, followed closely by the southern crossing. I already talked about the Central Avenue main line too. That is corroding. And you guys need to plan and budget for replacing that in the next 5 to 10 years. There's also the sewer force main. Those are very much like the Humboldt Bay crossing. We don't know the condition of those force mains from each of the 5 lift stations. And if one of those blows and then it'll blow in the middle of the night and pour it rain, and it's going to be a mess. You're going to get hit with fines.
Well, you're thanks, Pat.
Sure. I like to change what happens fixing it. So those, we really need to understand the condition of those as well, and replace them when it's nice and sunny out as opposed to pouring rain. Keep James's life easy. Got that one, and I got that one. So, just happened to work out. The total cost to replace the sewer system came out at $142 million as well. Simply because my memory's not very good, so we kept it the same. We fed all of those, so all this stuff I've talked about already. So the middle crossing is the highest priority, followed closely by the southern crossing as well as Central Avenue, and we really need to understand the force main conditions. So I fed all of that information to Willdan to have them run their financial analysis. So they took all of those in the 3-year projection. They already had your operational and CIP costs with some tweaking from Colleen. We updated that stuff and then fed them these costs for replacement. They looked at 3 scenarios for both the water and sewer. Either no rate increases, and I'm sure you all know that there's no way that we can afford to do this without increasing rates. But we also looked at just-in-time rate increases. So we would draw down reserves, paying for these projects. When they got to the threshold, we do a rate increase, bump the reserves back up, draw those down on projects, wait until they're below the threshold again, do another rate increase. So we looked at just-in-time rate increases, and then we looked at phased rate increases where we establish a certain percentage every year, and for all of them, draw down that money as needed. For each of those, we looked at 50 years, 75, and 100 years. Again, we're talking rates, but these are not rates that we're recommending get implemented by any means. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. We're just looking at, okay, what would it take? We want to replace the entire system, the entire water and sewer system. So this is the summary table. The first part is 50 years. If we try to replace everything in 50 years with just-in-time rates, the rates went from 0 to 41% for the water system, which averaged out to be about 7.28%. For the just-in-time for the sewer system, the rate increases varied from 0 to 43. That averaged out to about 8.62. With phased-in water system, the rates were 6.25 over the 50-year period and 7.25 for the sewer system. Did that for the 75-year, phased in 5% for water, 6.1% for sewer. And then over 100 years, it was 4.1% and 5.5%. This next slide just shows those same phased-in rates with a bar chart. Excuse me. So in this, in your board packets too, you had Willdan's memo, so you had all the output from their model. And this is just one screen capture for the 75-year for the water with a phased-in approach. I don't think I'm going to run through each of these graphs, but I'm going to pause there to see if you have any other questions on the financial approaches.
Well, I just had, you used the language, the projection period? What is that?
Pat, I'll handle that if you like. This is Jeff. We use a 30-year projection period for cash flow. As financial people, for us to go anything beyond 10 years generally makes us uncomfortable. I think someone used the term earlier, one of the board members, a Ouija board. For us, 10 years is a long period. 30 years when we're trying to lay it next to a master plan is a reasonable cash flow projection period. So our projection period was 30 years. We only showed 20, but we do have the model built. There's a lot more detail that you folks don't see that generate these graphs. The model is built for 30 years.
So that was a decision that management made that we would keep the projection period for a 30-year period. It was staff's sort of. We came to the conclusion that there was no benefit to the board for the boards be able to conceptualize going out any more than 30 years.
No, okay, I understand. So the project period is 30 years.
Yes.
Okay, then I have...
the funding. The funding.
Okay, I was trying to get the definition. Well, I'll read the sentence. Its current depreciation expenses were held constant throughout the projection period.
That's 30 years.
Okay, and I think that would be possibly low. I mean, inflation alone, and that's not buying anything else, if I understand the assumption. So, I'd like more detail.
Buying anything else?
If you keep...
Buying anything else?
It says capital depreciation expense was held constant throughout the projection period. I interpret held constant mean that it doesn't go up.
For existing assets only.
The price of what we buy is going to go up, so I think that's an unrealistic low expense. Depreciation expense.
So Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we applied our capital improvement plan to this, and was the depreciation of the capital improvement plan, was that included?
Yeah, it was. In fact, the part that was held constant, I think that sentence reads, and I apologize, I don't have it open in front of me, but I think it reads that for existing assets, in other words, the only depreciation expense we have is for what you have in the ground right now. And after some conversation with staff, we decided to leave that constant throughout the projection period. Then we went and estimated the depreciation associated with any improvements that are done as part of the master plan. So there is a whole nother layer of depreciation expense that does grow over time as you're adding assets associated with the master plan. So frankly, it's a conservative way to look at it, because I think, Greg, you're pointing out that the assets that you have now will be fully depreciated at some point, and that number will decline, but you're adding new ones as part of the master plan on top of that. So all that's been factored in.
Okay, so perhaps that assumption statement is a little awkward.
So we'll put together
the way it's written.
That, yeah. So I'll work with Jeff to clarify that. Okay, I'm going to move on. So conclusions, recommendations. Water system generally is in good shape. So really what we need to do is start planning for the replacement of the existing system. And getting that and setting up a roadmap for the district for the replacement of the water system. Sewer system, there definitely are some short-term fixes that we have to look at. The middle crossing, southern crossing, Central Avenue, as well as the force main.
And can I point out something? The main line repair on Central Avenue is already in the CIP, and there's already money in the CIP for design and in replacement of the central cross. And we're collecting rates to take care of it.
So would that get subtracted out in the cost of this projection, since we're already going to fund it through none of it?
No, I guess actually that's a good point. If it's already in the CIP, then and Jeff already had it as part of the CIP, so it probably did get double counted.
We probably did double count it.
Yeah, okay.
But we're not talking, when we're talking about $140 million, it's not material.
Well, my concern is because when you're talking 50, 75, 100 years, even 0.1% on all this stuff can really skew the data. So that's why I'm trying to burrow down a little bit on the assumptions, because it could be huge.
Well, I think going back to Greg's comment about every 5 years having to redo 218, we absolutely will be revisiting this.
Yeah, we'll be revisiting this every 5 years, and so we'll have the benefit of bringing this back to the board every 5 years and doing the analysis over.
Our lucky benefit, yeah.
Okay. That is the end of my presentation. Unless you have more questions.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, my pleasure, folks. Let me know if you have any questions.
Hold on just a second. Dave? Nothing? George?
We're going to talk amongst ourselves.
Well, I just, before we hang up,
Questions for the financial guy?
Oh, not really. No.
Okay.
I just want to talk
All
amongst
good?
ourselves.
All right, thank you very much. And how did you fare in the storm down there?
Not too bad. It wasn't, we lost power for about 28 hours. Our house was built after Andrew, so everything held together, even the pool screen. So it was a lot of excitement for an evening, and a little inconvenience for 28 hours, and then everything got back to normal.
Well, that's good. Thank you for your time this evening.
My pleasure, folks. Let me know if there's anything else I can do. If you have any other questions, any other clarifying comments I can make. All right?
You find any cheap money, let us know.
Thanks, Jeff.
Everybody asks that. I never help them out there, though.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board, and anybody has some discussion?
Well, I had a question to staff. The consultant and yourselves properly included our policy on debt on below 500,000, above $500,000. That was made back in the days when $500,000 was real money, as compared to $284 million. Do we need to take a look at that policy and really see, does that provide enough flexibility when we're dealing with the dollars that we have now?
I think that with the availability of money and the interest rates the way they are right now, I would much rather stick with that. If the expense of borrowing money increases, we might think about modifying that. Our intent was that when we fully embark on the replacement project, we'll probably package. It might be tough for us to spend more than $1 million or $2 million a year, so we would probably do packages of 3 or 4 years. Go out for funding for those. Get some sort of borrowing instrument in place, whether it's a bond or whether it's low interest loans from SRF. And then package those and do those in like 3-year increments and things like that. But I think for the time being, I would highly recommend that we maintain our pay go at 500,000. But I'll defer to Colleen. Do you have?
No, I think you're right about that. We have talked about the potential mechanisms and processes for funding this project, because this is such a long-term project. It's not like the sewer plant where you can do it in a lump. This is going to be a very, very long-term planning horizon, and trying to do financing for that also has to match. And you always want to match your funds and your expenditures, money in and money out. So that means that the funding also has to run a very, very long-term planning horizon. So.
Let me play this back. For now, you want it. One of the things that's a trigger for staff and presumably for the board is a change in interest rates higher. And the fact that our investments are getting 0.25% and getting larger in size during the current time period isn't sufficient to make it better to use that cash for payment of debt, to avoid paying debt, at higher than 0.25%?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. If you'd hang for a second, I'll see if there's any questions from the audience that you may want to respond to. At this time, I open the discussion up to anybody from the audience that would care to make a comment or ask a question. And seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. If the board is good, could I entertain a motion?
I'm not going to vote. I will abstain. I think for $284 million, I want the assumptions tight and footnoted, and that's just where I'm coming from. So I'll abstain if we vote on it.
I'd just like to make a comment before I'm okay with going to vote. This is just phase one. This is kind of the flyover at 100,000 feet. To me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're going to amortize this over 75 or 100 years, these projects, then in a sense what we're saying is our grandkids are going to pay the freight. Because we're talking about replacing stuff that has a 50-year lifespan, and I was interested in the 75 and 100 year for comparison purposes, but realistically, if the equipment is supposed to last 50 years, at the end of 50 years, that equipment should be depreciated, paid for, done.
Right.
And then we start over again. We go with the 7,500 year idea, then basically pushing it off on my grandkids.
Not necessarily.
I'll take the correction. I'm fine with the correction.
Because the point that Pat made was that a lot of times that AC pipe does last 400 years. So we get 50 years of useful life, depreciable useful life, and 50 years of free. So if we, I don't have enough, I'm not an engineer, I don't have enough to really, of that knowledge base to really make a call on that. But I do know that the equipment often lasts a lot longer than its depreciable official life, and doesn't need to be replaced. So you do get a lot of free years out of it. I can't see that this project's going to be that much different, but I need, a lot more expert information.
So we wouldn't use the phased in, we'd use the replace it as needed law. In that, what you just explained to me is that over the 50 years, replace as needed.
That's what I've been understanding and listening to the people who know about that.
Yeah. Well, I like that too. I like that idea that maybe we get 53 years. That sounds good.
Well, but then in that case, what's happening is, yes, your grandchildren are paying for it, but they're also using it.
Yes.
So they're using the same pipe we were using, and we're paying for it, and they're paying for it.
And I would highly recommend that however long, and the determination on how long the lifespan of the pipe is going to be highly dependent. We've already talked about that. And some pipe's going to last 50 years, some pipe's going to last 100 years. We're not going to know what those numbers are until the pipe fails. But it's not. It's really not in our best interest to take pipe out of the ground that's still
right. We're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that. So then comes preparing for whether the board wants to make the decision on do we go with small incremental increases in our rates to start putting the money away, to start pulling the money to replace this as we need to, or do we wait until it fails, then go to the ratepayers and say, well, this year, next year, we're going to need two back-to-back 20% increases because we've got to replace 3 or 4 miles of pipe. That's where I think it's going to be important for the board. That's going to be something that you guys are going to have to figure out where you stand on that and what your policy is going to be related to that.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I heard 2 different concepts. You were talking depreciation life, and what do we currently depreciate our pipe at?
We currently depreciate it according to its use will look like, which is 50 years.
Okay.
So if we have, so again, if we're looking at a replace as needed, I think the final reality of the financing is going to fall somewhere between those two things. We are going to have incremental increases, and we're probably also going to have to deal with some larger increases if we have large failures.
So basically, let me put this back. Manufacturers is 40 years. We've determined in-house on the existing pipe that 50 years is a more accurate number. Then we rejected the 40 years in this report and said that, again, 50 years is a more reasonable overall figure, knowing some are going to break earlier and some are going to break later. Is
That's accurate.
And is that model rate a savings to the ratepayer, the 50-year as opposed to the 40-year? It doesn't pay off quite as fast, but it's less as opposed to the 40 pays off a little quicker, but
should be less for the.
Well, I think we so that we're doing the ratepayers' business. We want to depreciate and fund things so that it's paid off somewhere, so that at the end of that depreciation, the end of that life on paper, sort of they kind of come at the same time. So, but with a lot of things, not so much batteries and refrigerators, things last a lot longer than what their warranties are. And I think that what we'll find is that the vast majority of the pipe in our system, our infrastructure will last more than what the useful life is for it.
So, yes, in my experience, and I've done a little bit of this work as a young man, it depends on the soil. When we go out there and look at what we have in the ground, we're going to have a much better idea about how long asbestos cement lasts in our soils. And another point I'd like to bring up is that if we keep it, if it's depreciated to zero and we don't owe money on it, that's the sweet spot. That's where you get to run for free for a ways. And it's possible, because of our soils, that we might be in better shape than we think.
Right. And then I think that as when you buy a car and you pay that car off, you're doing yourself a big disservice if you're not putting away that car payment after that car is paid off.
Right.
So I think the same thing would hold true for our water infrastructure and our sewer infrastructure, that we should be putting away at least as much money as it takes in depreciation every year to be able to pay for those pipes when they need to be replaced.
And when it comes to the soil types too, though, we already have a pretty good indicator because we know the type of pipes that were in particular places, how long they previously lasted. So that's a starting point. That's a good starting point.
So,
John, do you feel more comfortable now, or are you?
Oh, I feel much more comfortable, but I got the problem that there are errors in this, or we don't agree with portions of this assumption, and I hate approving something that, with the record says, well, we don't agree, it's really this, you know.
But
for example, the 50 years versus 40 years needs to get cleaned up, to me.
Well, the thing about it is that these are engineering estimates too. That there's a level of contingency that's built into these numbers that we might find in 20 years that these numbers were grossly overstated, or that we miss.
I understand.
We did a 20-year facilities plan on the engineer's best estimates, and it ended up being half of what the treatment plan ended up costing us. So,
well, I think first of all, you don't throw out the engineering estimates. That's why we hired them, and they're professional. They do it over many, many projects, and they have an adequate margin of error. So it's a heavy thing to me if the board doesn't. Probably the strongest testimony we had was from Colleen, who said, we've already made that decision, and as far as I know, the 50 years has been working. And then you independently as manager says 50 years has been working. So you convinced me that that's sufficient to overrule a portion of a professional report in standard engineering projections to change 40 to 50 years. But I hate approving a set of assumptions that goes to numbers that we have a different conclusion. And if we just clean this up, I think it's...
Director Corbett, let me just ask, or throw this into the mix. I'm not sure that cleaning it up could be cleaned up in the way that you're thinking might be satisfactory, because the engineers can't come back and say that they estimated different than they estimated. So I think that 40-year estimate is based on their professional evaluation, and I don't think you're going to get them to go, well, now we're going to clean this up, so let's now make it be different.
Can we get clarification from Pat on this?
I'm really not sure where the 40 years is coming from. Existing, sorry.
It's been in the ground for 40 years.
It's been in the ground for 40 years. The book says 50. And that's where we're 40 years old, but the book says AC the last 50. That's right.
So there was no industry statement that 40 years.
No. So your pipe that's 40 years old, its book value is at the last 50 years. So we got a 10-year window where we need to start replacing it. So I don't think anywhere in there we said it only will last 40 years.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So that's a great clarification. So
yes.
And the project starts in 2027, right?
Right.
At the 50-year mark.
Then my question to staff is, how do we, as a board, make sure we get let's say we do this. I think Dennis had a great point. They got to do it off their projections, and that's fine. And I liked your clarification, actually. It was quite excellent. But how do we, as a board, take into account these assumptions in our discussion and some changes? One of them was unclear. One of them, let's say we approve this. Then do we have in the next meeting, or where do we go where there's differences, and who's in charge of changing the numbers?
I'm sure the numbers won't be changed. They'll be refined in the next.
I'm sorry. Refined.
Evaluated.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I used the wrong word. Or clarified and refined, but if we approve this, I don't want this other stuff lost. That's what I'm concerned about.
So we're absolutely going to come back and clarify the depreciation statement.
Okay.
So the intent is to not throw out the phase 1 document and then start on the phase 2 document. The intent is to take this document, the phase 1 document, and then add to it for phase 2 and add to it for phase 3. So if there are specific footnotes you want, I would love to see them, and then we can work those into.
Right, and if there's sticking points, all we need is a recommendation from the board. You're not bound to approve this tonight. If there are footnotes that you want, or there are modifications that you want to this, we can bring this back next month for approval. But we would like to have your blessing for what we have here before we start on phase. Without this being phase 1 and being approved by the board and being your document, how do we start on phase 2?
Right.
So let me just say something to you. And we're not bound to never make any changes. I've been involved in many projects here. Almost all of them, we've had to make changes. Okay, so that's not an anomaly. It's not something. So making the changes are things that come up and are necessary. And when they come up, we all again make a decision. So it doesn't appear to me that it is like, you know, the 10 Commandments written on the slates. Okay, now that's all we can do. But General Manager had a fair statement, and the rest of the board, perhaps, would you all like to take it back to be brought back next meeting and have these things.
It doesn't have to. I just don't want this.
I'm open to that if you all are.
And I do want to say, I don't want someone to come up and say, "Oh, you spent $284 million based upon a report that you don't agree with." Well, it was clarified, but we didn't have a process for the clarification. That'd be very awkward conversation, and people are going to flip out over the dollar amount.
Would the footnotes that we're talking about be the clarification?
Yes, if we can footnote it, I think we can get across the line.
And can we footnote those changes as this develops if we approve this tonight? Can we say in our motion tonight that we approve this with necessary footnotes as needed? Is that a doable thing or not?
Or you could require the footnotes to be part of phase 2.
Oh, that'd be great. Then we get to move forward. I like that. Thank you. That's the
problem solved.
I'll move to take a motion. Thank you. I'll move that we approve phase 1, the mainline replacement and rehabilitation master plan.
Second.
I love this video. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Burke? A question first?
Yeah.
Do we need to state in there that we're putting the footnotes in the next phase or anything in this motion?
I take it to the bank there.
You can take out my performance evaluation if it doesn't show up.
I think it's fine for us just to direct the general manager.
Thank you for asking, though. I appreciate that.
Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Couch?
Aye.
Director Wheeler?
Aye.
President Mayo?
Before I vote, how did you vote? I didn't hear. Aye, okay. Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I did want to say, we actually really appreciate this process. We've been trying to figure out fair value or charging on every different element of the district. And this is the last one, unfortunately. You gave us bad news, but we really wanted to get that news, so we're acting responsibly. So despite discussing this maybe with vigor, I want you to know we really appreciate the work. And I think you gave us a much better foundation than we had before to make the decision.
It's a lot easier just to say Director Corbett's an attorney. We have to do this all the time. Thank you. Thank you.
So could I make one more point before I move on? I think that one of the things, and I just want to thank the board for taking this on. It's pretty alarming if you look at the rates, the changes in the rates that we'll have to make. If we wait until we need to start replacing pipe, those 40% increases. It's not. We wouldn't be doing the district the ratepayers a service if we held off.
Right. This time next year, the rates.
We'll be running secret deficits, and I don't like that.
So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Moving on to item E3, I'm going to pass this off to Director Couch. This is an item that I'm involved in, and I'm going to step out.
Page 295.
Item E3, claim damages for auto collision, and it's going to be presented by Colleen.
Staff recommends that the board discuss, take public comment, and deny the claim against the district resulting from the collision involving Unit 23 on September 9th, so that those district's liability insurance can properly handle the claim. On September 9th, Unit 23 was involved in a minor collision as Director Mayo returned from an Aqua Region 3 Region 4 event. The collision resulted in a standard claim against the district, which is attachment 1. In order for the district's auto liability insurance to handle the claim, it must first be rejected by the district. The general manager signed a standard notice of rejection, which was provided by our liability carrier. That's in attachment 2. However, Regulation 63 in our rules and regs also states that the board may grant variance in the case of special circumstances, unnecessary hardship, and where such variance would not defeat the purpose of rules and regulations. In this case, no variance has been requested. There are no special circumstances or unnecessary hardship, and granting a variance on this claim would result in our liability carrier being unable to properly process the claim. That being true, staff recommends that the board deny any variance on the claim damages resulting from the collision of 2023. And I'll entertain any questions.
It's standard procedure that when there are claims against the district that those are usually patent. Those are just automatically denied by the general manager, and then they're automatically brought to the board and in almost every case recommended by staff to deny the claim and allow them to negotiate with our insurance company. That's why we pay liability insurance, and that way we're not admitting any fault that might cause issues down the road. So this is just very procedural, and we haven't had any claims lately, so it might be something different, something new for some of the board members. But it's pretty typical and historically how we handle any sort of claims.
So we got to hear from the audience, but I'm going to move that we deny the claim, and I think the explanations to staff are excellent.
I'll second.
So, Carol, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the term rejection. That's just, like you said, I'm not familiar with the process, but rejection is essentially a process not admitting fault, and then it goes to our insurance, and then they can deal with it. Is
yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
It's like if I hit your car and I could just pay off, or I could say no talk to my insurance company. We're saying no talk to the insurance company, right?
Yes.
Director Burke.
So any public comment in the audience on Well, I'll bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. Do any other roll call vote?
Director Burke.
Aye.
Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Couch.
Aye.
Director Wheeler.
Aye.
Thank you, Director Couch. Okay, moving on to E4, review the draft strategic plan 2018-2022, attachment 1. It's the draft, and this item starts on page 301. And our board secretary is going to present this item, if you would please.
The McKinleyville Community Services District strategic plan process began in August of 2012 with board approval. The strategic plan was returned to the board on December 4th, 2013, where it received the final approval of the MCSD board. Staff continues to update the strategic plan by meeting regularly to reflect continued progress that MCSD makes with projects, finances, and improvement programs. This plan is foundational to the district's long-term financial health and stability, yet provides annual reviews to stay grounded in the current and midterm needs of the community we serve. The strategic plan will continue to be presented to the board on a calendar year basis for approval. Tonight, in a workshop format, we would encourage the board to discuss, add, and modify policy-related issues to provide staff and management direction for the coming 5 years. Cells highlighted in yellow of the section number column of the matrix reflect changes made to the narrative. For clarification, the board and staff will be working with a consultant for a 5-year update during the coming year. Staff recommends that the board, in a workshop format, review the proposed 5-year strategic plan, discuss, make recommendations, and take public comment. No action will be taken at this time, as this item will return for approval at the January 3rd, 2018 board meeting.
And is that the conclusion of your report? Thank you. So I'll open this up to board. Dig right in.
Could you describe the difference between this review process for what we have in front of us and what we're entering with the 5-year review process? What do you hope to gain? What do you hope to get out of us tonight versus what are opportunities to work on this document in the 5-year strategic planning process?
So the annual adjustment to the strategic planning process kicks off in earnest the budget process. So it's important that we have guidance from the board related to policy matters, and then also so that the board can see where the projections are for the capital improvement plan. There are some operating expenses in here, but the vast majority were related to policy matters and also and capital improvement matters. So what we're looking for in this is basic modifications and acknowledgments of where we're at, where we've come from, and where we're at in the position of handling these. So this is more or less a discussion about the 1 year. The larger strategic planning process that we started on earlier in November is part of the 5-year process, where we'll actually be taking stakeholder information. We'll be asking the board to consider the strategic plan in a little bit different light. That'll have more. That will be using a different process to be able to add, prioritize, and then phase, so that we're not asking staff to work beyond their resources to be able to do so. I think for right now, what we're asking for is a very short-term picture of the calendar year for 2018.
I'd like to state again on page 326 our partners, professional partnership with community organizations. The skaters aren't there.
The what, Jordan?
The skaters, the folks we gave the right entry to, they're not in the list of organizations that we're partners with, and I think they should be there. Page 326.
The senior center is missing from that list as well.
Is it? Okay, well, the senior center should certainly be there because we're really involved with them.
And perhaps a double check on our committee assignments, the different areas we have partnerships, like is REDAC in here?
That's not really a partnership, but maybe it is. I'm not quite sure. Be open to think about that a little bit. I don't see the Chamber of Commerce. Maybe I'm just missing
they're
that.
right in the middle.
Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce, gotcha. Okay. So there's some other partnerships that are listed in the matrix. Well, here it is on the California Special District. And I'd like to add Aqua onto that, and I was going to ask the professional groups or associations that those of us that are in, and I don't know, Mary, what perhaps you are, or George, and David, with your work, or if you were in another professional association, that we think about those, that might be also something that we want to add, because that is something that individuals who work on and bring it back to our board, so that would be something. And then there's one other thing.
On these partnerships, could we just email you the ones that we think should be added, and then We don't have to do it right now. do we?
No, I'm just thinking it's stuff to, throw in the can. The other thing that I wanted to say is, I think George and I are going to be very happy on the 7.9.
Where's that?
Page 42 of the matrix, 7.9 is altered for an alternate energy. This coming 2018, we're going to, as a board, make a decision on our solar energy program. So I wanted to say I'm glad to see that there, and it looks like we're going to, get off the pot.
Yeah.
That means for those of you at the Mad River Union that we're going to make an educated decision.
On the integrated test management plan, do we have the matrix on the what we're using where? I mean, is it a done deal now?
Yeah, yes.
The matrix for the.
Yes. The report will come to the next board meeting. But since it was only approved in August, we really only have a quarter's worth of information to report for the first year, because the integrated pest management plan actually calls out that the report goes from October to
turn in November 1st.
Okay, it goes from November 1st to October 31st, and so the first year only went from August to October. So that's when it comes back next year when it comes back in January, it's only going to be about roughly a quarter.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank staff again. Did a well lift, and congratulations. It's done now, right? No more meetings?
No more. Actually, they met today to consolidate the information that will be part of the annual report.
Wow, impressive job.
I had a chance to talk with our general manager today a little bit about the structure of the document, and two main comments is I'd like to see our elements, and I don't know the appropriate time to do sort of structural changes to the document if the board feels that here's what I have to say and feels that they're appropriate. But when I'm reading through this and it has a number system to it to help us follow along what's happening in each strategic element. The numbering system, I would find it much easier to follow if it followed a regular pattern of looking at, let's just say maintenance would be sort of 1.1, it would also be 2.1, and it would be 3.1. So as you're reading the document, you know where to look when you're looking for maintenance, and then it would follow along that the 0.2s would be related to maybe expansion of services in that regard. 0.3 might be like rehabilitation or upgrades type. So I just found it, especially when we're looking at two things very similar, like water and wastewater, that perhaps the structure of the document could be formatted a little more user-friendly. And it might also, that's one comment. Anyone care to comment on that? My second comment is that I do believe partnerships are extremely important to the work that we do as a services district, and I'd like to see our partnerships listed within the strategic elements so that we can be increasing the visibility of those partnerships in our thinking and in our work. So for example, in the water element, Aqua would be listed there. It could also be, if we have a separate section on the partnerships that we do have, it could be listed again. But again, it's just a way that when we're going to the strategic plan, that we're sure that we're doing that double check on who are the partners that are involved with our work, or that we could go to if we have a need or are considering an expansion of services. So I know those really aren't concrete things to write and edit. They might be more just larger editorial comments that we approach with the larger 5-year planning process. Is that what you would recommend?
That's what I would highly recommend, that since we're going to embark on the process of a 5-year modification or a 5-year renewal or update to the strategic plan, that those sort of changes in the structure of the strategic plan, we would address those at that point in time. I would say if we had 3 or 4 more years left to it, I would say let's tackle that now. But but since we're going to be working on the next strategic plan, we can note those and then make sure those get addressed then. And those would be good things to bring up to the facilitator too, as we're working.
Right. So anything that jumps out at streamlining elements and making the flow easier is always good to look at. So appreciate those comments. Anything, Director Couch? Director Corbett? I'm fine. Director Wheeler, anything?
No, I'm quite pleased.
All right. So
one more.
Yes. What you want?
Let's see. On the 4.4, the community forest, let's see, so staff will continue discussions with stakeholders and pursue grant funding during this planning period. I'd like to suggest that we also do some very light level assessment of management opportunities, such as being in the carbon market, feedback on maintenance costs and whatnot. We have some great local resources, the Van Eck Forest and Arcata's Community Forest, that just a few meetings to talk through these elements to get a better handle on what taking on a community forest would mean. As I understand, we haven't gotten into that level of research and planning for the forest. So maybe a line about identifying opportunities and constraints in management of a community forest, including such programs as the carbon market, carbon credits.
Would that be something that you would like to see included in this iteration, or is it something that we could add to the process of the 5-year?
Well, I think the budget implications of having I'm suggesting maybe a couple of meetings would be pretty low level, and I think if we were, and I imagine we're in a time right now, I mean, there's SB 5 that's coming to the voters in the summer that's going to have a lot of money available for parks and recreation and whatnot, so we could very soon be in a position to be applying again for funding for community forest acquisition. So it would seem to me to be timely to get it in so that we're ready.
Yeah, the discussions are always good. We had general conversations with Mark Andre and with Jerry Reinerson and with Greg Compton, on how their things are going, but nothing substantive like, okay, now give me a list and stuff, but just the general conversation. So it is something that's definitely there that everybody's aware of and thinking about and asking, but But I think it's getting to a point that it would be good to actually ask some, more strategic questions. I don't know proprietorily how much information one agency or business will give us in terms of what they're making on their market rates, et cetera, but they might. I don't know. And it's no problem, no harm about to ask. They might say, go get your own broker.
So, question, are we talking 4.4, 2018, wanting to change that? Is that what we're talking, 4.4?
Yes,
2018, we're talking about that?
Yes.
Yeah, 4.4, but not necessarily a change, just an addition.
Just an addition.
I'd like to be, educate the board a little bit on the realities. What are the realities of community forest? I don't have a clue. I've never even seen the property. I've never even seen it, and here we are, we're going to identify it, and we're going to pursue grant funding for something I've never seen.
When we had Trust for Public Lands, were you not on the board then?
I think that in the problem we keep getting, and the public has, and then we of course inherit it, is this was sort of on a fast track. It is dependent on the wind seller, and then they were going to come up with half, and we're going to raise it, and then they sweetened the deal. They were going to come up with 100%, and then they wanted to complete some other transactions before this, so we don't really have a deal, and it's a very awkward spot, and everyone wants to know about it. Is this good or bad? How much money do we want to spend on something that doesn't exist? Now you've got to question whether it ought to be in the plan, the strategic plan, if it doesn't exist. But that's what I see as the dilemma. And if we were to have a public hearing, let's say something about the proposal upset the public, the willing seller might never.
Hold that thought. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Director Burke was talking about having a public hearing. She was talking about having some quiet one-on meetings with some of the people that are doing this to get a little more information for us.
Yeah, you mean separate from the transaction?
Yeah. Right, separate from the transaction.
Okay, and we should be able to get carbon presenters dime a dozen.
Yeah, and not necessarily.
And also the market.
Not necessarily to have it be, agenda items, but just for us to do some research, to sit down and do some research.
Let's start looking at, and if I understood you correctly, things related to carbon credits, also maybe maintenance, but very generic, very concept level.
Yeah, maintenance hours per acre, kind of just things that we can help use to calculate future.
One of the things that Director Corbett said several times over the last couple of years is really, really true. And although I still want to do exactly what you have suggested, is that even without that, and even without a plan, once you get it, without maintenance, it's growing. It's actually, it's of value and becoming more of value no matter what. So, but that it just isn't also.
So maybe just educate the board a little bit on the realities of running a community forest, so we have some idea about what's involved.
But I can tell you there's a long list. It's very expensive. That's not what's on the table from my standpoint. First, we got to get it, then you build it up in stages. So, really, properly managing the forest is a lot of work, a lot of time and money. I don't know whether we can step into that the first day. We may just have to own it, fence it off and wait. But so that's my concern. Right. I don't mind it, and I want everyone to be well aware. But that isn't the cost being projected for this project, because I don't think we could afford it, and I think we'd have to say no. And yet we haven't gotten an offer yet. That's my concern.
Right. And I agree with you, and those are things that we're going to have to, strategize, strategize, all that. But when it does come in, that stuff will work out, and there are a lot of things that our wish lists and stuff. Director Corbin and I would talk about this ad nauseum this week about things that our representatives can do for us, and that's something that our congressman could actually pretty likely help us with. Once it's there, it's getting funding to help that, and I think he would be ecstatic to do that. So, all righty. So we all good on this? This is a informational item.
All right, this is informational. It's coming back again next month. Approval.
Yeah, it'll come back. It'll come back as the beginning, as the kickoff to the budgeting cycle for fiscal year 18-19.
All right. Anything? Go ahead, Mary. Yeah.
Well, one more comment. Just that in the time I got to spend in the RAC committee, I would just find a word to describe the level of work that Leslie is leading with updating the master plan. I would call it a whole new deal. I mean, you're really having to do a heavy lift there. So I'd give that word a little more weight, but that's just a word.
All right. Well, thank you. We good to go?
I do have another question. In the 4.6 standards and specifications for the open space and parks, does that include ADA access? Is that the type of standards and specifications that we're looking at there?
That would be a part of the standards and specifications. This is related to treatment. So if a developer decides that he wants to create a landscaping strip, and they want us to take that landscape strip as there would basically be a set of standards and specifications: the types of trees, the type of mulch, the frequency of different types of plantings, those sort of things. That would be something that would be part of the standards and specifications for open space and parks and maintenance. Also, if you're going to create a small neighborhood park, and you wanted to know what type of garbage can and the placement of garbage cans, picnic tables, and things like that, it would basically be as you can now. If you ask us, I'm going to do a subdivision. I'm going to install manholes, fire hydrants, water meters, and things like that. We basically have cut sheets available, and there's verbiage in our standard specifications that dictate what we accept. It would much be the same thing. It'll lead to standardization and help us control costs, because those concepts will be the maintenance value of those things will be considered. So it will help us to be able to dictate to the developer, it's got to look like this, and it's going to cost us roughly this much. So we already know those numbers, so that we're not having to go back and create the wheel every time that we do a maintenance assessment.
That's great. Could it also be used by a developer and the services district? Imagine what happens now is with each development, there is supposed to be a certain amount of park per unit or per, let's say, capita, and that the developer can pay that amount into Quimby or can build it themselves. Could establish would this help the developer understand what the cost would be of developing a park, in that perhaps what's happened in the past is they've said, oh, well, developing a park is going to be way more expensive than just paying this Quimby amount. But could it be a way to maybe help encourage developers to implement parks?
Yes, it could be a way to help encourage them, and it will also be a way for us to be able to have a little bit more control over our destiny related to what we accept from the developer, because right now, basically the county dictates to them, and then we approve it. But if there was a standard for that, then the county would say, just like they do for water and sewer, refer back to the district standard on that part of the specification would actually be a spec sheet in the plans, so that we would have more in front of the process, say so over what ends up being in that community park or that little regional park.
It's occurring to me that perhaps it could be a mechanism also to establish sort of a minimum level of a park, the equipment or structure that gets put in place by a developer, and then perhaps the services district could use that as a cost share and then find grant funding to fund the rest of it, or something along those lines, so it becomes affordable for a developer and also affordable and able for us to use it as cost share and finding outside funding. Just a thought.
Sure.
As long as we're on this subject, just a quick question. When you build a park, does the state get involved in the sense of playground equipment or the depth of chips or any of that kind of stuff? Those are all
mandated by the state.
So we don't have complete control over standards and specifications.
So as with our water and sewer specifications, they're basically in most circumstances are the Unified Plumbing Code, just our call out of the Unified Plumbing Code. In some instances, we might actually add to that or ask for something a little bit more strenuous than what the Unified Plumbing Code would say. The same thing might be the case with the park. And this is just for instance that if the state mandates 4 inches of safety surface underneath the playground, we might decide that, well, we want 6 inches of, so the minimum would be, the state would mandate the minimum. We would have the flexibility to ask for something more than that.
Okay.
But by no means when it comes to the playground, the safety attributes of a playground, there are minimums already that are stated by the state.
Okay.
All right.
I have another comment.
Go ahead.
In 4.9, staff will analyze participation revenue and expense data for all programs to determine best practices in program offerings and development. And I think it might be helpful to have in there an element of assessing the quality and reach of the programs, and in this way allow staff to be thinking outside of revenue and expense. So quality, looking for partnerships; reach, looking for, are there elements of our community that we might not be reaching? For example, there was the North Coast Journal article showcasing the new park that went in Arcata that provides services for ADA and a really forward-thinking type park in that way. And so by having something of an assessment of reach and quality, that the directors and staff could be adding that to their assessment. Of course, this is cost-benefit analysis. I don't know if that would live somewhere else, but
I guess that would probably be that would live somewhere else.
More than likely back in the previous conversation.
I think
Well, it kind of
It's a limited master plan, that kind of analysis and assessment for where gaps in services are, and quality assessment that's a different thing. That's something that I do with my staff through program participant evaluations. But as far as gaps in service and where we're not meeting the community's needs or desires, that's in the master plan.
Thank you. making sure I get through all my notes. Thank you. That's all from me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to E5, consider adoption of shared set of core values for the guidance of Board of Directors behavior and action on page 346. Is that right? Am I on the right?
345 is the item.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 345.
President Mayor, could we take a brief?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be shy next time, you guys. Just holler at me. Of course, you won't have it next time. You'll have to holler at Director County.
Oh, right.
Holler at
We're
Director County.
gonna change the guard.
I'll live forever.
Get Director Burke.
Do you smell it?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And honey.
My,
So while we're on break, why don't you give us a
my stepfather's 80.
rendition of Johnny Boy? Where's Johnny Boy?
Johnny Boy? No, you're
Tommy
the
Boy.
Yeah. That's too high for me.
You can do it in baritone. Maybe baritone, sing Tommy
Yeah,
Boy.
with the live, stuff floating in there.
I
Yeah, I just was out on the Trinity River and I had two people back
I
to
thought
back
that was fun.
talking to me
You should
about
hear me when I tell you said it's my turn.
I
We're
had
gonna
already
test each one
a
of
couple
them.
years ago.
Speaking of that, everybody,
Was like, okay,
right? Take it still.
okay, I'm talking about Denver.
Just saying, I'm just saying.
And so I thought, that's a little bit of something. I should take it up again. So I drink a nice tall, warm glass in the morning.
We've for years, the only thing we ever had was vinegar and honey. And we mix it up and that'd be cough syrup and variation on the theme, the Seventh-day Adventist that I knew when I was a kid. Rarely ever got sick. Ate their oatmeal, and then they would have a glass of hot water with a whole lemon and enough honey to make it go down. I did that every day, and I rarely ever got a cold.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I was coming down with a cold, and then started doing this, and I didn't get it. At least so far.
Good. I know it seems a lot later, it's only 9:15, it sure seems like it's about midnight.
A lot of ground.
Long day.
Wilderness report was a heavy lift. And there's a lot of duplicated stuff in there too. You know, I read and it started over again. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just read this. And I was working my way through it.
So I think we can go, Leslie's going to do this report, and Emily will be back in just a heartbeat, so I think we're good to open back up. And let's do item E5, adoption of shared set of core values for the guidance of the Board of Directors.
Is your mic on?
Adoption of E5, and our Recreation Director, Leslie Frisbee, is going to give us a report on this.
At the board retreat on November 3rd, 2017, the board of directors began the process of developing a set of shared core values, including definitions, behaviors, and actions which would serve to guide the work of the board in service of the district. Due to time constraints, that process was not completed and was scheduled to be completed at the December meeting of the board. The last step to completing the set of shared core values is to define actions, individual, board, and organizational, that will enliven and grow the values selected and defined at the November 3rd retreat, which can be reviewed in attachment 1. Staff recommends that the board complete the process of establishing a set of shared values that began on November 3rd at the board retreat. Consider the information provided, discuss, take public comment, air questions, and adopt the set of shared core values as defined. Now I'm really out of my comfort zone because it's not how I want to facilitate a process, sitting at the table in front of a microphone, because it's where we are.
So get uncomfortable and say whatever you want.
That's perfect. I'm going to apologize in advance if this is not nearly as much fun or engaging as me writing on the wall with markers. This is not. So the last column to complete is defining actions. Actions that you as a board can take, either as an individual group, also as an organization, that will enliven the values that you've chosen. So you've defined your values, selected your values, you've defined them, you've described the culture, what that value looks like when it's at its best. And now you have to decide, like, define things you actually do for each one. So this would be start contributing to the process, and I can write your things in as you're going, or take notes and then break later.
Thank you, Leslie. One of the things that I found to be very interesting is as we did our original assessments of the things and the people that we do, and honed it all down, and I came up with family. I thought, well, I'll be the odd duck here. All those things, but family kept coming up with everybody. So I was really happy to see that, and I think that speaks a lot for the core of our community. You know, when you've got a board of directors of a big organization doing things for a community, and they all come up with family as one of the main core thoughts of it. You know, I think that's just really, really good. So I appreciated that and just wanted to bring that up. Open guys.
The family was a good one for me too, and I wrote down in their actions to create family is that we would listen, agree or disagree without judgment, and that anyone who shows up for a board meeting is family. I mean, anyone who shows up, like that gentleman sitting back there, he's part of our family. He showed up and he sat through the whole thing, and I'm dying to ask you why.
And sometimes, you know, we send family out for pizza. So, you know.
It's anyone who shows up is part of the family because they showed up. Not very many people do show up. We need more controversy than we got. For the responsibility one, I thought that governance versus politics, that we all come from different places, but we come in here and we work together and we're doing what is necessary in the best possible way with the best possible intentions, and we all come and we're all so different.
So how do you turn that into a specific action?
It's what we do.
How do you turn governance versus politics into a
Politics
specific
is
action?
all about me. Politics is when I run for an office or something. It's all about me and what I want. No, people.
Right. I understand what you're saying, but what I'm looking for is like a very concrete action. This is what we will do for this. And governance is what you do.
Yeah, and that's governance, and I got to disagree with you 100%.
Okay.
Anybody that's got a family, anybody that's married, anybody that's got a brother that's tough to get along with, that's all politics. And that's the core of politics. You've got to learn how to, you know, do things. And yes, you want to try to get your way, and that's a part of it. But if you have a family, you're involved in politics. Right. So I don't think it mean anything.
Back in the old days, that used to be politics. Politics means a whole different thing nowadays, so.
Well, no, I understand, but the core of what you do is very similar. And if you want to make things to be all esoteric and all, and find excuses for why, you can do that. But the reality is, so how to put it into action?
Yes.
Is we come to this board meeting and we do the things we do out in our community, and we do it outside of our personal goal. We make a conscious decision to do what we're doing for our community, to butt heads if necessary, but to come to a conclusion that works for the community. That's the direct action, from my perspective.
Could we try to, and this might not totally hit it, but could we try to simplify it into something like prioritize governance, or prioritize governance over politics? I mean, does that get at all?
And I guess I understand semantics. Semantics is important, and perception is reality. But I can't delineate the two. Politics to me is how we interact with everybody that we interact with every day, and this is just another level.
So I know this is challenging because it's hard to take these concepts and turn them into very concrete actions. And so I would encourage you to look at your culture, because that's the step right before action. So you're talking about responsibility, accepting all consequences, both good and bad, adaptive management. Accepting all consequences, both good and bad. What is something that you would do at a meeting that would show that you are accepting all consequences, good and bad? And can you help?
I don't know how many of us, probably all of us, I've sat here and had people absolutely lie about me completely. And I went, well, thank you very much for your comments.
So you acknowledged.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a thing that you do, that's an action. Acknowledge.
And say this is part of what we do. We have to take criticism.
So
that's just part of what we have to do.
Acknowledge and correct. These are things that you would do.
Acknowledge it. You said acknowledge and accept.
Different perspectives.
I think one of the things that we do is we seek unanimity in our votes. I mean, there's been a few things that have come up while I've been on this board where I didn't agree with the board. But, okay, there's 4 people here who represent this community, and you guys want to go that way? Okay, I'll go that way. And, like streetlights, I happen to agree with Dennis on streetlights, that we both go with the streetlight thing, because that seems to be what the community wants. So where we could be the protest votes.
That was
we could be the protest vote.
That was, and I thought I was, but the learning process for me was that different people who wanted their streetlights, who I know, and why are you doing that? It's our streetlight. You're supposed to be doing the job for us. And if I had to stop and internalize that and go, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
So you might set aside your own personal opinion?
Correct.
At a meeting? That's another action.
As well, review policy and practice regularly. So that's part of how you do adaptive management.
Yeah, no more mistletoe at the office. Oh, sorry.
We had to do it with mistletoe a long time ago. Kids kept trying to give me smooches. So.
Is that right? Oh, okay.
Just don't use mistletoe.
You don't even sing that song anymore.
Okay, so 3 concrete actions I have for responsibility are acknowledge and accept differing perspectives, set aside personal opinions, review policy and procedure regularly.
And then in the box, there's under responsibility. Now that was just brought up elsewhere, asking questions and listening, demonstrating follow through. Do those still fit?
Yes.
Are we
So how do you demonstrate follow through?
Yeah, John.
How do you demonstrate
How do you demonstrate follow through?
And responsibility? Good votes?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Good votes?
Yeah, how do you demonstrate
responsibility? No, follow through. How do you demonstrate follow through?
demonstrate?
So reflecting on outcomes and results.
I mean, our ultimate actions are our votes. I mean, that may not be even in the ballpark, John, I don't know.
Oh, I just was gonna go for responsibility.
Yeah, that's one we're on.
Well, I know, that's why I was gonna.
I didn't know what you did.
No, Dennis, I'm gonna be, I know. Solving problems rather than blaming people.
And John puts up with it, and he doesn't to me when he's not here, believe me. But I don't know. Humor is very important in all of this. So I know maybe but to try to have some humor and light I think that's an action for me.
Lightheartedness is under family in culture.
Yeah.
Do you think that should be humor? And do you think it's in the right place?
I would say that humor fits in with the family.
Well, I was, of course, it would go in every one of them. You talk about responsibility and making tough decisions and maybe giving up your own biases. And you got to have a little humor there would help you, So. But I'm good with it where it's at. So did you have enough on action for responsibility or not?
Well, you have to, it's not up to me. I wanted, I think you should
wait a
have as
minute,
many
wait a
actions
minute,
as you
wait a minute.
see fit. I just was trying to lead you in the
You're
direction
getting
of
a
setting
paycheck
actions.
now, darn it, you're supposed to.
I still think problem solving.
I got it.
Yeah, okay.
My fingers
Is that going up there?
Oh, it's
Wow.
Mr. President,
Yes,
since this is a workshop format, is the public invited to speak at any time?
I'm okay with that.
Just in case you wanted to provide comment on any of these.
Absolutely.
Probably way too smart for that, but because he could be sitting here at home putting up Christmas decorations. So that's why I'm here.
And earlier in family, I heard listen.
Well, since I view the whole community as are we done? Are we on family yet or not?
She's writing.
Yeah, she's right in the family column there. Agree and disagree without judgment.
There are potholes down the road, and Timmy Hooven lets me get into his grinding pile. And so that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's a good family thing for Timmy to let Supervisor Sundberg as well. And there's spots where I know people are, it's a bad deal, and I'll go get a couple 5-gallon buckets full of grinding, and I'll go fill up the potholes. Supervisor Sundberg does that as well. I think that's kind of a family approach to our community. That's just one example. I mean, there's many, many more that everybody does.
So an action that would fall in that would be being intentional in getting to know one another and your constituents and your community. That builds your family connections.
Be intentional in your actions.
Be intentional in your
Interaction.
curiosity in getting to know others.
Getting to thy neighbor.
Okay.
How do you know people before you can
Yeah, no, that's good.
Freaking hate
do
them.
favors and get favors?
So I had balancing projects, work, and time for your family.
Right.
Say that again, please.
Balancing projects, work, and time with your family.
What's a specific action you do to balance?
Strive for balance, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Is that a striving?
More company parties. We need more company parties. That's what we need.
Are we keeping this Leslie specific to us as individuals, or are we looking at the larger?
Well, you can address it as individuals, as a group, and as an organization.
But not
it's specific to your action, like you as a board and how you serve the district.
Okay, yes. So don't get out there talking about other people doing other things in the township.
No.
Okay.
I mean, that's nice, and it is, there's an element, like, clearly that's very familial, but this is about...
Well, and this is something that's kind of a bad deal now. We had a lady who, her son was a druggie and was taking her money that she was supposed to pay her water bill and to fix her check valve deal, and didn't do it. And so a bunch of us got involved and got that fixed, which I thought was the right thing for us to do. But now, since some of the trainings we went to, they told us that as a director, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't even tell the guy in the truck out there, hey, this lady's having, or this water line, we're supposed to call the general manager and tell him and have him direct the process. So that was a little, I understand the mechanism, but it's a little disconcerting to me in how, we deal with our neighbors.
Yeah.
So that's an odd.
That's uncomfortable.
It is.
And unfortunately part of the role that you play. But back to actions for family, things that you can do.
We one of the actions was how do we turn humor or lightheartedness was one of the family.
Yes.
So that was one of the things that we discussed. We need to figure out how to turn that into a action.
We'll have an open mic at our crab feed.
I think an action would be maintaining a sense of humor in your work.
I can tell you that from my interactions with staff, at least most of the ones that I am on a regular basis with the maintenance crew, they're a jovial group. At least when I see them, they seem to have a great sense of humor. Seem to always be laughing every time I walk out, so I don't know if they're just laughing at me or what.
When you work in poop for a living, there's no real way to do anything but have a good sense of humor.
So when you look at the culture and behavior for family, efficiency, lightheartedness, respect, listening, caring for members, forgiveness, understanding with respected leadership, there's what kind of actions come up with care for members, show forgiveness. What are specific things that you would do?
I always wave at guys when I see them on the street. Does that count?
Yeah, I mean that's being friendly.
Okay.
It's an action, Leslie.
Yeah, acknowledgement.
Acknowledge the work.
Acknowledge others in the community, acknowledge each other.
Welcoming to all members of our community is in family in the box below. Is that covered?
Where?
The red writing.
Oh, it's down the red. Yeah, but do you wave?
Well, I wave at just about everybody I drive by. No.
Well, I don't see too good, so I wave at everybody too.
I make a point to engage everybody that it looks like there's a moment to be able to that I don't know, and ask them, what's going on, and tell them, if they need something, and this is what we do. So I just make a point of doing that. And sometimes it gets you a free cup of coffee, so it's not a bad way to do it.
So you're intentional when you engage with others.
Absolutely.
That's an action.
Yep.
Okay, so for family, we have listen, agree and disagree without judgment, maintain a sense of humor in our work, acknowledge and welcome all members of the community, be intentional in engaging others.
Seems to be working.
One of the things that all of us have done, I'm pretty sure all of us have, is we pick up trash, you know, kind of pretty consistently. I don't know where that fits, but that's, and
Is that a behavior that you would like to list as a defining action or something that you?
it's pretty defining, because I'll tell you what, you've got to make, again, like working in the food, you've got to make it, because if you don't make it humorous and you don't, you know, you can get really upset about it.
I guess in essence, it's kind of a small action, right, that anyone can do. So is there a way to state it kind of like people say, you know, the little things matter?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Well,
Leslie,
and-
I know that doesn't help
No, I mean, I'm thinking it's something about stewardship. So you're stewards of the community.
Yeah.
You take care of it.
About a month ago, we again got a couple ice boxes and a washing machine and 15 bags of trash on the road. And by the time I saw it in the morning, I was feeding, there's nothing I could do about it. Fed came back, was gonna grab my, you know, stuff to do it. And by the time I got back, Scott Bender and another guy were already there with, you know, so, and that was helpful because it took the three of us to load all the damn stuff up. So it kind of centered, that's not synergistic, it's the other thing, where it builds on itself. It gets exponential. So when you're nice, when you laugh and somebody else laughs, you know, it all builds on itself.
So the action is participate in community service events and community meetings.
So Leslie, I told you know what you're talking about here, so you could just tell me those things, because it's a lot simpler.
I
So
can't.
it's a
I
lot.
cannot even come to speak to all the words.
No, you put it in the right way. See, that way I don't have to go blather on.
You got to give me the idea. Okay, so how do you feel about what's in the box for family? Those are some good actions.
Yeah, I think we've got it.
Okay, so we have integrity and fairness left. Which one do you want to go to first?
I don't know, but Director Couch is going to take this one, because he always wants to step up a bit more, I heard. So this is yours, Director.
Fairness or
Whichever one, it's your baby. Was that being helpful?
That was excellent. Good job in
It seems like fairness under family, the agree and disagree without judgment fits for fairness as well.
So looking at your definition decisions based on rules, facts, and circumstances, and then the culture of consideration given to all facets in a consistent manner. I agree and disagree with judgment fits there, and then but there's more.
It seems like when we address that, in my experiences on this board, we're usually talking about rate adjustments, or we haven't really done fee structures because there hasn't been a 218 thing
So-
out there. Or did I miss that? But fairness in the sense that we don't do special deals for some folks and then we turn, you know, talk to the hand to other folks. We're fair.
So how can you be sure that you are giving consideration to all facets in a consistent manner? How do you show up to make decisions and are able to do that?
That we're knowledgeable of the rules, the facts, and the circumstances, and then we make our decision from a
do your
position.
homework.
We know the rules, we know the facts and the circumstances, and then we make our decision. We don't just wing it. Please.
You have to show up after your homework.
We have been flexible, though.
Yeah,
We have been flexible, and sometimes, as Director Council would put it, we've given people options that they can make, just, instead of just being, cold, here it is. We'll give you an option, you can take this off this time or that time, or whatever.
Yeah, if you don't know the rules, the facts, and the circumstances, it's hard to be fair. I mean, you just might as well flip a coin. I guess maybe is that fair? Flipping a coin?
I would say that we have to implement policy. That's, fairness. We have policies. Either you revise the policy or you implement the existing policy. Oh, sorry.
So adhere to policy and procedure.
You're good at this, Leslie.
Good policy procedures. Take action.
According to policy and procedures.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of taking action after considering.
I would say here, we don't listen without judgment, though. I mean, we listen and then we make a decision. I mean, we're judging the facts, the circumstances, the rules, and then we make a call.
And so
and that's judging.
It's a different judgment.
In what way?
Well,
you're making a judgment without being judgmental.
Yeah, the judgment above.
Just facts, ma'am.
Take action without being judgmental.
In family, it has judgment, but that's agree and disagree without judgment. So that means in conversation with another, you can agree or disagree with someone without judgment. But
yeah, you're not eager because you don't agree with me. Right.
But in this case, it's judgment.
You're disabled, right?
I was formulating my thought, but he got it.
Okay.
I missed it.
It's all right. It's just silly.
How are we doing, Leslie?
So, listen without judgment, adhere to policies and procedures, know the facts.
But is there dispute to having listened without judgment in this item?
It can be there. I think we're arguing semantics, and we could get way down in the weeds on semantics. But at some point in time, when rules, facts, and circumstances, I'm gonna make a decision. I don't know that I would judge you as being a bad person.
I think taking action on decisions is not the same as making a judgment.
Okay. I'm good with it.
Sometimes fairness is not always doing what feels good.
Yeah, we've disappointed some people.
True. And how do you make that an action?
It's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt me a lot worse than it hurts you.
What did you say about in our retreat about suspend? Oh no, that's something else. Another meeting, but suspend like discomfort.
Oh, you have to lean into the discomfort is more thing. Accept the discomfort.
Accept the discomfort.
Making difficult decisions.
Just a little horse analogy. Y'all probably don't know, but when you brand a horse, though, you lean into it.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Steer won't do that.
Okay. So listen without judgment, adhere to policy and procedures, know the facts, accept the discomfort of making difficult decisions.
Seems pretty good.
Sometimes
that could almost go into integrity too.
Yeah, and Emily and Greg, both of you chime in on this because you're an integral part of the interaction of this too. I mean, this doesn't work without y'all. So, and your guidance Come on up, because we need you to say something on the mic so that we can capture it.
All right.
And what's your name, sir?
My name is Jeremy McCullough. Live over in Jasper.
Jerry, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. I just want to say something real quick about the maybe the actions for fairness would be possibly something along the lines of maintaining transparency so that people can review the fairness that you've shown.
Yeah. Nice point.
I like the word transparency.
Yeah. Transparency somewhere.
Where can we get that in?
Well, I think that fits in integrity also.
Yes. Yeah, that would fit good in integrity too.
But not too much transparency.
And from the box below, I mean, it's using the value in a statement of action, but maintaining integrity in dialogue. And, I think we're right in the work we're doing on researching the policy for anti-discrimination. There's a bit in there about how communications can become informal. And I understand and wholeheartedly agree that life in all facets should be, you should attempt humor. And I just want to, make a statement here that it is our responsibility to have integrity in our dialogue and to be sure that our communication, especially as leaders in our community, is non-discriminatory. And so I think if there's doubt at all, we have to withhold, even if it would, be funny for an individual. We have to consider all members of our community and make sure that we're representing our community with pride. I don't think, so that's probably, can you get an action up?
I don't want to use integrity in the action, so I'm trying to struggle in there. I think maintaining honest dialogue that doesn't harm. Because when you talk about being, non-discriminatory and thinking about how your humor might land on any one individual, when it lands badly, it hurts somebody. So your dialogue should aim to be
Non-harmful dialogue.
Yeah, maintaining honest and non-harmful dialogue. Still non-harmful, it's got to be a better word, but we'll live with it for now. Here's your document so far. For integrity, accept the discomfort of making difficult decisions, maintain transparency in actions and discussions, maintain honest and non-harmful dialogue. This is the foundation.
We've got something in every box.
Well, good thing we didn't have 5 things.
Yeah. Start repeating certain points.
So if it's agreeable, then you get to adopt it in some way. Just get to vote on it. It's an action item. And then where is this going to live? In the fourth?
So the living place for this, my perception was that this would be part of the strategic plan, but it could also be part of the board's policy. It could be in the policy manual.
Could it fit with the self-evaluation as well? we're evaluating ourselves?
I think, in my opinion, I think that's an excellent, it should be reviewed and assessed in your evaluation, but it should also.
But since this is part of the board's shared goals in their actions, that's. I thought it was a natural place that it would go in the strategic plan, that we would use it as part of the strategic plan. But it could also go in it could be in the preamble to the board's policy manual also. So
that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. You want to let us chew on that, maybe bring it back to re-look it over ahead of time, and maybe, I don't know.
I'd like to have an opportunity to think about, because we've kind of duplicated fairness and integrity. Listen, accepting discomfort, that's exactly what we have under fairness too.
Yeah.
So we kind of repeated ourselves a little bit, and we might be able to do a little better job if we had another go at it.
So would you like to take some time to think about it and review it, and we can bring it back in January for a decision?
I'd like
to table it.
Yeah, I'd like that. Done?
Well, so
Sometime when we have
And I can email this out to you so you can think about it.
yeah, let's call postponing the decision on the shared values.
Well, I don't know. Director Corpus ready to go without an argument. That's rare.
I can please you.
I have a question on family. The last clause is, care for members, forgiveness, and understanding with respected leadership. What does that mean? The understanding with respected leadership. I know.
Just remember that we agreed on it, and
I think it had to do with the fact that there's that in any family situation somebody's got to take the role of leader.
there's defined roles, so you have this understanding of one another and where your roles are, and there's.
And respect that role.
Yeah.
Well, then could we add roles at the end of leadership?
Yeah.
Because then it
makes sense.
Makes a little more sense. Understanding with respected leadership. Or would it be with respect and understanding?
With respect to leadership.
Leadership? I don't know, so.
And then I did have a comment. I think it's better in the strategic plan rather than the board policy manual, because almost all these words are pretty general, and I wouldn't want board members subject to discipline in the board policy manual because people feel different definitions of some of these words. So I think it's a little better off in the strategic plan, and then people will just go with the sense of the words.
Well, and I think it gives a good framework for the mission. You have your mission statement, you have your shared values, and then you have your goals and objectives.
All right, so.
All right, Leslie, another round.
So does the board want to codify this in the vote, or
No.
Would you like it to bring it back again?
We're going to bring it back. We're going to table. We're going to table this.
Well, you want to table it.
No, you don't want to table it. You really can't bring it back.
Oh,
well, you can always do it to the next meeting, but I think we're going to continue this to the
We're going to continue this to the next meeting. Or an appropriate time as the general manager sees fit. Because something could come up where your time needs to be spent.
That's so. Expect to see it at the next board meeting.
Do we need a motion to continue?
No.
Okay.
And would you like the draft sent to you?
Yes.
Okay.
I would.
Okay, let's move on to item E6. Consideration of authorizing for Director Mayo to attend the Association of California Water Agencies 2018 DC Conference, February 27th through March the 1st. And the Board Secretary is going to plead my case.
The Aqua 2018 Washington, D.C. Conference is set for February 27th through March 1st, 2018 at the St. Regis Hotel in Washington, D.C. Attendees will learn firsthand the priorities of Congress and the new administration, get the latest on the budget and funding for programs of interest, meet and join fellow water agencies to show the importance of California water issues, and better develop federal legislative and regulatory strategies. The cost for full conference registration and meals package is $645. Meals not provided by the conference will be approximately $134. Staff recommends that the board review the information provided for the Aqua DC 2018 conference, February 27th through March 1st, 2018 in Washington, D.C., take public comment and consider authorization for Director Mayo to attend and for the district to pay his conference registration fees and provide per diem.
Thank you. So I just wanted to add that I appreciate having been able to do this in the past. I've already booked my airfare and the hotel and stuff, so, and I'm going one way or another. But if the board considers, my time out there valuable, I'd appreciate it.
Is the airfare considered in the financial analysis?
No, I pay for that. I've done that every time.
On your own?
I pay the airfare, I pay the hotel, and so,
I'll move approval.
Couple $1,000.
Yeah.
I'll move approval, but on this particular one, I would like a detailed report, since there's so many changes happening at the federal level that would seek to get that information from your travels.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, ramble a little bit about your trip.
I would love to, and
I only said a little bit.
Okay. Well,
I think he was trying to limit the amount of
Dennis.
I'm hoping to have lunch with our congressman and the new senator from Minnesota when I'm out there. Soon to be new senator.
Senator from Alabama.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if you Senator more light.
No.
Light approach.
But I do have several people that I see every time. I see Senator Crapo from Idaho every time because he's very, very, very influential in some of the stuff that's important to California water that has to do with forestry, the headwaters, and the critical issue of our forests burning up. So one of my big issues, what I try to deal with when I go back.
Did you have a motion, Director Corbett? Did you move?
Yes, I made a motion.
I'll second.
Call for the, open this to the public, anybody from the public?
I saw in Colleen's report that we're pretty good in our travel budget still, so.
So, see no one from the public?
But you have to be on good behavior, Dennis.
We'll call for the roll.
You guys.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Couch?
Aye.
Director Wheeler?
Aye.
President Mayo?
Yes, motion carries, thank you. Moving on to item E7, consider approval of resolution 2017-27, adding appendix A, board direction for committee assignments, and reference of the appendix in rule 3-4 to the board policy manual. And the board secretary is going to present this item.
A document was created to aid in the effort of streamlining expectations of MCSD directors and their role on various committees while maintaining a sense of consistency, the goal being to incorporate the final version within the board policy manual. In August 2017, individual board revisions were made to the draft and track changes, and a request was made to bring the draft to the board in meeting setting for review and discussion. At the November 1st, 2017 meeting, the board reviewed and discussed the draft and made a couple suggestions to incorporate into the policy. Staff has made additions and presents the final draft for approval as Exhibit A of Resolution 2017-27, Attachment 1. Staff recommends that the Board review the information provided, take public comment, discuss and approve Resolution 2017-27, adding Appendix A, Board Direction for Committee Assignments, and reference of the appendix in Rule 3-4 to the Board Policy Manual.
Thank you. All right, any board comment?
The first paragraph where Appendix A starts, I believe the Senior Center Advisory Committee is not in that list.
Um, 352.
On 351 at the top, Appendix A.
Under the standing committees.
And what's the terminology for that committee, Mary, again?
Senior Center Advisory Committee.
It's called the Senior Center.
Yeah, it's not.
McKinleyville Senior Center Advisory Committee. It's on the whereas, the first whereas of the resolution, but it just didn't make it into the first paragraph of the Appendix A.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so let's make that
But it's
addition.
not called, the bylaws have name it something else, but, and I don't remember what it is. So do you want to clarify that and name it appropriately, or I think Senior Center Advisory Committee,
Well,
we understand what that is.
In whatever motion that gets made, if we have the motion on this, we'll direct the general manager to put the correct title of the Senior Center Advisory Committee.
In paragraph 1.
Paragraph 1. That work for everybody?
Good catch.
Okay, good catch. Good.
How does one expand the, or change the description? We would come back to the board and the board would vote.
Right, I mean, that's what this was basically circulating to change the description. But there's nothing that says you can't do it out of order. Otherwise, it'll come up annually.
So I like everything. Thanks for catching that. Any other comments? Hold on. Any comment from the public on this item? Seeing none.
I'll move that we adopt resolution 2017-27, describing our committee system as amended.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Couch?
Aye.
Director Wheeler?
Aye.
President Mann?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you for that. All right, move on to our presentation from support services.
You have committee reports.
I don't have this in order for some reason.
There's
our committee report. Okay, yeah, sorry. Recreational Advisory Committee.
Well, when we met, what was it, in Leslie's report, was we had a nice potluck before the thing. That was
You didn't invite me.
Everybody was invited.
You didn't tell me that there was
gone.
food.
Yeah.
You were gone.
Although I think I find out I like spicier food than the rest of the community.
Oh, I thought it was a pot. I thought it was a potluck. My brain. Where am I at?
Well, we wouldn't have got any work done at all.
You know, there's spicy pot.
There's a spicy meatball.
Jalapeno pot.
And let's see. The other thing that I noticed from the meeting was that the Little League was kind of interested in having a seat on the committee. And the committee, when we talked about it, were saying that somebody from Little League wants to be on the committee, you know, we'd all support that, but we weren't really thinking that they should have an automatic
We've
seat.
got a opening on the alternate or the full.
Yeah, we have 2 seats.
That's well, that's all.
No, that's 3 seats. One voting and 2 alternates.
Oh, good, tell them to run. All righty, area fund.
Did not meet.
Redwood Economic Development Commission. I'm going to give you guys a web number if you want to look at it. It's www.broadbandmap, lowercase, all one word, .ca.gov. I don't know whether you need the backslash or not, but it was in the deal. And it is the map of all the broadband in our area where it's supposed to come and go and intersect. And that was our discussion, and it was interesting. And Connie Stewart is working on some aspects of that more in the rural angle. You know, she's working on some policy and money and stuff to do that. And then I can never remember his name, Sean, who does the access stuff, Sean. Anyway, and so they went through all the nuts and bolts, and again explained why AT&T goes out all the time. It's because they're a bunch of cheap boogers. It's really simple to buy the extra time on the you know, the little magic beams that shoot out that we get all this stuff on, and reroute it over here, and then it goes on a line there, and then you put it in the magic beam off of this tower, and they just won't do it. They won't spend the money. They won't do it. They keep, you know, so. But anyway, this is an interesting map, and if y'all want to take a peek at it, that's cool. And so that's.
Did any discussion? Is there still talk of the cable coming up across the Pacific? There was talk of the cable.
Well, that wasn't part of the discussion. It's a different.
That wasn't part of it.
Well, no, that's a different. That's a totally different deal.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there wasn't on this presentation. This was strictly about what broadband is doing here. It was touched a little bit, but just that, you know, there'll be some more potential connectivities when that comes to fruition, but basically not. Anyway, so that's a report on that.
Dennis, on the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission, were they involved in bringing in the other airline?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You know, if that comes up again, I know everyone hates it, but if they paid $1 million to United for better service, they might.
It's now $2 million is the asking price.
Right. Anyway, if that would get more frequent flights and cheaper, it might be easier. Because what I've seen is the last 30 years, it's been big enough from one airline, and United's been able to outcompete everybody.
If that's not even. And I understand the question and your point. That's not even a consideration.
Okay, that's fine.
Not even that has got nothing to do with our. Help me out. Was it Delta that we had that was our direct flight to LA? Which
Alaska.
Horizon or Alaska.
That was our direct. No. It was our direct LA flight.
Horizon, Alaska Air. Horizon.
Anyway, actually, I prefer no substitute of any kind. But
That flight was full. We met our market expectations. Coming and going, 2 flights a day, met all the market. Didn't matter. We didn't fit into the model. It's the regional models, the regional size, the number of planes. So, and our airport sucks big time. Sorry. You know, they can't get a beer, you can't, you know, I mean, no, not that, people are traveling, you know, I mean, and you get these people looking, there's not a restaurant, and so all of those things go into play, but they're actively searching full bore. I mean, Greg Foster and the
I mean, my first preference would be 0 subsidies. My second is try something a little different than the past state failures.
Every small regional airport in the nation is suffering the same way. Monterey is one of the rare exceptions because it's a private airport supported by that community, and it has enough.
Yeah, it's a services district, isn't it?
Yes, and it has enough conferences going that it can keep the sufficient. But I'll just give you an example up in Wenatchee, Washington, where my mom lives. It's right in the middle of Apple, in the horrible place, horrible airplane, Panghorn Airport, horrible airport, hard to land in, and they were about to lose everything too. They just did a multi-million-dollar upgrade. They made their runway to where you could land the biggest planes in the world. They now have that direct flight to LA because of putting all of that in, all of that, making their runway larger and their airport real spiffy, and it costs a lot of money. And so that's what we compete with now nationally is the airlines are consolidating, doing these consolidations. San Francisco shafted all of us little guys. They put now there's only 2 runways for these smaller planes. And one of those runways, I don't care if it rains a little bit, you can't land on it. Whoever designed that runway is unbelievable. So that all adds up into it. They're actively looking, and I kind of think it's a fool's errand. On the other hand, I can't say that. I'm part of the committee, and I do my best to advocate, for them, and as they all do. There is some real active push to get some charter busing that we could get at a reasonable rate, so that we could jump on the charter. It would take us right straight to San Francisco Airport or to Medford. So that is an option. In the short term, it ain't going to get better for a while. So I would love to hear all of that, but that's the way it is. McKinleyville Senior Center.
The advisory committee did not meet. The Senior Center board had their first strategic planning meeting, and to prepare for the actual strategic plan coming in the new year. And the holiday luncheon or dinner is happening next Wednesday. Yeah. I won't be able to be there, but I hope some. And the other December meetings were canceled.
Good. Well, and thank you for.
I can get you the time on that, but I have to pull up my phone.
It's noon, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's at noon.
It's right
Noon on Wednesday.
Pretty
All
sure.
right.
I'll verify it.
It's Wednesday. I've got it in my calendar here. Too.
Noon on Wednesday.
Yeah,
The 13th.
So the audit committee.
No meeting, but we expect to soon.
Employee negotiations.
No meeting.
Yeah, but we did some great negotiating tonight. Giving them the slacks really helps. Good idea.
That was a bitter fight.
Yeah. Water task force
Did not meet.
Ad hoc no drugs and toxics down the drain.
We did meet. After, Mary and I got together and talked about this issue in our community of needles in sharps containers. And I went over to Hiller Park and talked to maybe a dozen or more people that were over there and asked them, if you found a needle on the trailer in the park, what would you do with it? And unanimous, throw it in the trash can. Well, the reason there are sharps containers in hospitals is not to protect the users, it's to protect the people that dump the trash.
Right.
Oh, it's to protect the people that dump the trash. Well, we have staff that goes out there and dumps those trash cans, and if there are needles in those plastic bags, that's a risk to our staff. So I would kind of like to I'd like to bring it up as an agenda item for the board that we might consider the fact that people who find needles in our parks are throwing them in our trash cans. We're already providing sharps containers, but they're not safe.
Where do we have those at?
The trash cans.
Garbage cans.
Yeah, but we're already
Where are
providing.
the sharps containers we're providing?
Oh, it's a facetious statement in the sense that people, they find a needle, I ask them, what would you do with it? And they, I throw it in the trash can.
Okay, so okay, I got you.
And then staff comes along and jerks that plastic bag out, and it's not safe.
And not only that, but I think that another issue is people that aren't trained to pick up sharps, handling sharps.
There you go. So anyway, I think it's something we might talk about as a board. Put it on the agenda and let's kick it around a bit. It seems to be on the public radar right now, and folks are talking about it.
It's a big deal everywhere,
And I've put some thought in. I was surprised when I went to Vegas just recently, and there are sharps containers under the sinks in high-end rooms.
Right, but you know, that's as I sent you a comment on. That's mostly for people that have diabetes. Now there are drug use parts of that, but a big part, many more people with diabetes than most people realize. But anyway.
I would agree. But so anyway, my feeling is that I've seen some of the comments, and it's like, well, we're not going to provide any services for these people that are using needles, and it's like, no, it's not for the people using the needle. They already used it. It's for the people that dump the trash.
Right.
So anyway, I'd like to see it on the agenda.
It's something that I think we could consider. I'm not sure.
Do you have any comments on it, Mary?
Because
we actually met. Drugs and toxics met.
Well, that's good. I would suggest, and I've had before, but that one of the things that I think this district could be the action would be more fruitful is to come up with a 10 or 12 minute presentation about, the grease poured down the sink, the different pills that you don't throw down the sink, sharps is another, that we would take to the grammar school and the high school, because one of the quickest ways to get changes in behavior is through the kids. And I was kind of hoping that maybe, as we keep on this, that would be something that would be, a simple thing maybe that we could hone up, and because,
a little bit would be educating the kids. What do you do if you find a needle? What does a kid do when they find a needle on a trail or in the park somewhere? So I think that's a good idea. And the grease and the pills, and apparently, judging by the pictures I'm seeing on Facebook, we got a problem with needles in our forested areas as well.
And that's one of the conundrums of this. You're going to get very few users that are going to use it. There's going to be some. When the kids pick them up and one thing. But anyway, that's good. It's a more rounded discussion would be fine, and I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, we definitely don't want the kids picking them up and putting them in the sharps containers. That's for sure. Because if an adult's not qualified or trained in handling sharps.
And so when the district provides something like that, and then a kid gets hurt, you've got great exposure.
Well, that's the idea of sharp containers. That's why they have them in hospitals. That's so staff doesn't get hurt.
Well,
once again, the users already use them.
What I meant, George, is that if this is something that we have to consider, is if the district authorizes putting sharp containers somewhere, and then a kid gets hurt picking it up to take it to the sharp container that we've authorized, there is some exposure to us in that injury. So it's just more the conversation.
Yep.
Who locally is doing the most research on sharps?
I don't know who's doing the research, but we
or working on it. Is it Kimbergell? Is one in Eureka on City Council? I think I was reading an article on that.
The Humboldt Open Door Clinic will take them. The fire department will take them.
It's
The
the
sheriff's
farmers
office.
take them.
The sheriff's
Well,
office will
I'm
take
You gotta
it.
carry them up there though. That's
The
thing.
appropriate place to learn about liability and how other local agencies have dealt with it.
Well, I think talking to our attorney and maybe some physicians, would probably.
Maybe talking to our staff
More
too.
appropriate.
Staff.
Our staff are all trained, and most of them have sharps containers on their vehicles, don't they, James?
Yeah, they're trained not to, when you pick up a garbage bag, not to twist it and tighten the bag, the sharps out, to take it loose, tie the top.
Right. So we've got some in-house.
So
training.
locations, where do they tend to find these needles if they do, and, you know, where?
Everywhere.
They're everywhere.
Meter boxes, open space zones,
Manholes.
they're everywhere.
We run some guys out of the barn at the roping arena. 5 times in a row I run them out because they were like candles up there. You know, I gotta get the hell out of here. Well, we go to move, you know, in one part where I didn't, and we started moving some hay to feed, and they're just here, they're all over falling down on us.
Oh, geez.
You know, I mean, they're just everywhere.
I find them, my route that I walk to work every day, about once a month, I'll find a bag of them, or just find them laying indiscriminately, depending on how they put the cap back over the needle part. If that gets turned or twisted, that needle will come through the side of that case, through the side of that cap, or it could get pinched and still be sticking out the side of it, and you've got a sharps issue right there. So you got to be really, really careful about how you pick them up. I would highly recommend nobody, unless you're trained. We have a pair of pliers and a sharps container that you can put them in, that you do not handle them. And you definitely don't want to be reaching under. If you see them reaching under a bush or fishing for them, yeah, and gloves aren't going to protect you from them.
They don't protect you at all.
No.
So if Mary and I were to pursue this a bit under the drugs and toxics, that'd be finally board, and then looking towards an agenda item down the road, and we'll talk about it. Maybe we can bring some information back to the board. What do you think, gentlemen?
What was the question again? The board,
The drugs and toxics would become active on this issue, and that we will do some research, talk to people that are involved. Maybe we can look into, what does a sharps container cost? I don't know. We know, right? Staff knows.
Sharps containers you can almost get them given to you, but they're not expensive.
In most situations, they'll give them to you.
So a big question would be the liability associated with putting them in our
But
farms.
Right, but the thing is that there's a difference between a sharps container that's portable, like we carry on our trucks, and the ones that bolt to the walls, because you don't want to just leave sharps containers laying around.
Sure.
You know, it would have to be something that was attached.
Okay, well, we beat this one up pretty good. So.
All right, well, thank you, guys. McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee.
did not meet.
Cornerstone Committee.
We did not meet, but we're going to shortly.
Good.
Exciting.
Did Dennis vacate the premises in that committee?
Long ago.
He did, yeah. Well, that's too bad. He was a good asset. And who replaced him? Or have they?
Ryan Sunberg.
Oh, Ryan did. Ryan's not quite the fundraiser that Dennis is, but he's a good member. Dennis could raise
He's
money.
connected.
Yeah, Dennis, that's all he ever did was raise money, so, you know, it's kind of easy to twist. Groundwater Sustainability Committee.
Did not meet, but I heard through my travels that between February and April, the Department of Water Resources will issue a preliminary decision on the exemption.
Right. And John and I both went to the groundwater sustainability forums at this conference we were at, and it was very interesting. One of the main concerns that I've always had, why I work to try to get us on our groundwater basin deal is that it will come to fruition that lots of the lower echelon monies are going to probably be filtered into basin committees to be, apportioned out. The IRWIP money that is one of the few ways that we can get money for smaller projects and rural communities has been very, very good for our region. The appropriation for it in this round of bills legislatively in California, it shrunk down to about a fifth of what it has been. So I'm thinking that it's a good thing we're on this one. Some people might think we don't have much connectivity, but we do. And so any district that's not part of a groundwater sustainability is probably going to be left out in the cold for some money availability. The other thing is that every agency, and there was the state people there giving their spiels and on and on. I would say there was at least 30 people got up in the queue, all different agencies, and just screamed bloody murder at them about what a power grab this is and how they're taking over authority, and nobody's happy with it, but they don't care. So that is your assessment?
I heard that, and I think it's always has a high potential to more where we don't want to.
Yeah. All right. The miscellaneous advisory committee. We're about to come up with our draft, and we've been working really hard at it. And this is on our updating and upgrading, revamping all of our different policies and functions relative to discrimination. And what do you think? Next month, perhaps?
It has been to the attorney. One minor modification was made, and it should be ready to come to the board at the January meeting.
Very good.
Okay, I would be one to give strong support that we hear promptly.
Oh yeah, no, it is, and our committee's going to be up, so we've got it ready. Mary, I was just giving the report on our miscellaneous advisory committee, and it's been to the attorney with one revision, minor revision, which we'll get back, and we're without something radical happening, we'll be ready to bring it back to the board for their look.
Yeah, because the board is no longer the committee has sunsetted. So.
But we have a I think a very, very, very good product, and so we'll have that here next meeting for everybody to review. All right, so now I'm to support services report.
I'll keep this short. The recovered reserves account will be 100% complete by the end of December. We found we had only, we've been collecting about $24,000 per month in the reserves recovery over this period. And we found we only had about $2,400 left to collect in December, so we reduced that $3.66 surcharge to 10% of that, so 37 cents for most of the 5/8 meters. So that will be completed December 31st, and it will go away entirely to zero in January.
Yeah.
So that's all we're going to do.
And amazingly, where I sit, I can hear people that come in and they pay their bills, and nobody's commented on their bill going down.
Nope.
I'm going to sing praises for my bill going down because you're one of your newer employee, Jeff, and I can't say Jeff's name, so Samaras. Seymour?
Simon.
Huh, Simon?
No.
It's like, it's a Czechoslovakian type name, yeah.
What's seasonal Jeff's last name?
Simon.
Chicken?
Anyway, so he has stopped me 6 times and says, you have a leak, Dennis, you have a leak. No, I don't got a leak, man, I checked it, I ain't got a leak. He goes, dude, you got a leak. and so, and I finally found it. And then it's not just one, I fixed one today, and there's another one. But it was so little, these leaks, but it was enough,
Yeah.
So, and I really appreciate that about our staff, and I appreciate him, not saying, oh, okay, whatever. He was freezing, no, you're good, you need not much, but it's moving.
When you fix one leak, it usually causes another one.
That's what I mean.
It seeks them, Once you build the pressure that little bit, then the next leak happens.
It's a pretty new line, Greg. I only put it in about 40 years ago.
Well, you have at least 60 more years of useful life out of it.
1 inch black platter. Anyway, I apologize. But
Anyway, nothing further to add.
thank you so much.
Has he paid up?
No, I'm not actually. Operations Department.
Nothing yet at this time, thank you.
Park and Recreation Department.
I only wanted to add that the donor tree is going to be installed sometime in the week of December 18th through the 20th.
Should say a donor.
The donor tree is
Tree, oh, okay.
The middle school art students finally got
Right.
the trunk completed, so they're going to install it. And I don't have all the engravings done yet, but at least we'll have a start to getting it installed. So.
Very good.
Could you talk about the meeting with the Safe Routes to School group? Who was involved? And I mean, you provided a nice description.
I don't remember all the names. There were 3 young women. Aurelie Tufts is the one spearheading the program. But I met with 3 people from the program and Jess Anderson. And they presented a variety of program options that they have grant funding for. Education, pedestrian and bicycle safety education, things that they will deliver at our after-school program and summer camp. A bicycling club that they would administer. I think we decided summer camp would be the best place, where they would provide adults to supervise children on bike rides around the community after teaching them about bike riding. And they have a fleet of 10 to 15 bikes that they can provide for that. They have grant funding to create a permanent bicycle rodeo course at in one of our parking lots. I would choose the Miller parking lot because there's a lot of bicycling that happens on the end of the trail, and I know my kid would love it. That was the most feasible. I think those are the things we're going to tackle first. But it's a 2-year grant, so over the next 2 years there will be a variety of bicycle and pedestrian safety and education programs. And another one is bicycle maintenance. They will do a class on bicycle maintenance at the after-school program and summer camp also.
Where's that going to be located?
At the Morris after-school program
Okay.
at some point, and then our summer day camp over here at the activities.
The bicycle maintenance.
The course, they'll do it within one of our programs.
Oh, so you don't know which location yet? Okay.
And so this was county staff, is that right? From county public health?
Yes.
Great, that's exciting.
Okay, General Manager's report?
Yeah, I just would like to report to the board that as of Friday of last week, the process, the new process of the treatment plant, the upgraded process, is performed to satisfy the 30-day biological test. And as of Friday, our staff is now operating the treatment plant, and the training wheels are just about off. So our staff are doing the daily observations. We're doing the required testing, which we've been doing for a while, but without the support of the contractor, it's doing good. We're able to meet the requirements. Our new we should be able to handily meet when we get the new permit. We should be able to handily meet that. So that's definitely a milestone for the process. We did the final walkthrough on Tuesday for the punch list. The punch list is all but finished, other than things that are going to have to wait until the weather improves. And there's some issues that we're waiting to reconcile related to the paving that was done by Hooven and Company, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some sort of conclusion with that's amicable for both the district and for Hooven and Company.
Was there any appreciable cost to us to get in this process of getting this stuff working correctly?
There were some extended costs. The board should be familiar with those because I came back to the board and requested a budget modification and an extension to the contract for construction management, construction inspection. Those costs were directly related to the general contractor taking longer than the contract time on the project, and we were able to absorb in the original contract for construction management, construction inspection for the weather, the issues with the weather, but because of issues that could be or could not be construed by their lack of responsiveness to getting the project done in a timely manner. We had to then extend those contracts for construction management, construction inspection. So we're in the process now of negotiating those things with the contractor, and we may or may not end up in arbitration over that. But I'll keep the board abreast of that. We have enough money in retainage to cover those costs. But I don't know that they're going to be amicable with us.
Right. You're expecting to get some recovery from them, though.
I would expect that they will. At this point in time, my position has been that the district should not have to incur any extra costs for this. That they should all be covered. We did send them a letter voicing that we were in a position to be able to assess liquidated damages. I don't know that we want to assess liquidated damages and just more or less request that we get that in retainage that way, because there are bonding issues related to the assessment of liquidated damages and their ability to be able to secure bonding for future projects. So I would tend not to want to ask for us to assess liquidated damages, and just hopefully that they will allow us to keep some of the retainage that we have to cover those costs. It is significant. It is over $100,000. So that's that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
How's the biological community doing in the wastewater?
It's doing very good. We're actually to a point now to where we're creating sludge, and we're continuously having to increase the amount of wasting that we do because we're making bug bodies pretty fast now. So it's a great indication that through the increase in the amount of sludge that we're making, or the biosolids that we're making, and through the process, or through the reduction in ammonia and the reduction in nitrates. The process is working very well right now.
Great. Through that startup hurdle, sounds like.
Yes, definitely. It was a little bit, it was slow coming, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they opted to use about a third of the biosolids for seeding that was requested originally from them. So it definitely, I think, cost them this extra time.
Very good. All righty, President's report. All I've got to say is thanks for letting me, working everybody with me and helping this be a real productive year for me, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And any board member comments, announcements, reports, or agenda item requests?
I do. So I mentioned, I forget when, in this board meeting, that I no longer have the opportunity to serve on the RAC, and I really miss that open dialogue and the ability to be really involved with the recreation programs. I wanted to be sure that Leslie knows that I miss that engagement at that level. So now we have a different relationship with me being on the board. So in going through what happened at the committee meeting, I saw that you presented a fact sheet on Quimby Act and outlined what is currently in each of the funds. And I would like to request that something of the sort come to the board. Understanding Quimby and how we use it, and how we might be using it in the next 5 years is of great interest to me. Because I guess to say sort of concisely, our customers always expect the water to turn on and the toilet to flush, and we do a great job of that, a fantastic job of that. But where I think we really touch like the heart and soul of people and care for them is in our recreation programs. And so I'm really interested in better understanding how we provide those services.
Okay. Anybody else comment? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second. Oh, do we need a second?